Chapter 2084. Is she really an elf? Their timid eyes stared straight at the Nightblade god Toxiang. Perhaps because they were of the same species and could understand each other. The four elements felt a sense of belonging to the Nightblade god Toxiang. Nightblade god 10 Fragrance's eyes also glowed with a sense of belonging to the same kind, a feeling of mutual appreciation. Looking at Dustless's eyes, Janssen gritted his teeth and said, "Can you help me find a white doll?" Doll. Wuxia frowned. Only then did he remember that there was a doll in the four elements called the Four Kainai. You lost it when AST was chasing you? Nightsword god Toka asked angrily. Those bastards just won't go away. They are nothing compared to Coterie. Of course they are. Wuxia was non-committal about this. Then he added, but those two organizations aren't good people. Are you saying that Coterie is not a good person? Toka was stunned and looked at Dustless in surprise. No. Dustless shook his head and said softly. I'm saying that the organizations behind them are not good people. No matter what kind of group they are, as long as they are related to organizations, there is no such thing as a clean organization. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. At the same time, a sharp sound came from the sky. Mysterious falling objects covered in flames were whizzing toward them. There were so many of them that it was dazzling. That is. Dustless's eyes opened slightly, and the mysterious objects a few hundred meters away suddenly became very clear. Are those missiles? Those AST members are really boring. Dustless sighed. Then he frowned and said, no wonder they have to seal the power of the elves, otherwise the psychic waves emitted from their bodies would be really troublesome. Not sealing the power of the elves means that they will emit psychic waves at any time, which can be easily detected by AST. Disappear. Dustless's eyes flashed with a black luster. His pupils focused on the large number of missiles. Then he blinked slightly. Amaterasu. In an instant, the oncoming missiles were engulfed by the black demonic flames. The sky was filled with black flames, and the missiles formed a black wall of flames in the direction they were heading. Boom boom boom. After a while, the void exploded, and the sky was filled with flames. The black smoke was more than 10 meters high, and a large cluster of flames connected together. It was quite a spectacular sight. Thank you. Janssen stood up and bowed to Dustless very seriously. Perhaps because of her young age, Janssen was quite timid in everything she did, and her shining eyes contained some fear. Don't be so polite. Wuxia smiled and rubbed Sinai's hair. He comforted her gently. Anyway, AST will arrest my servant even if you don't exist. Your servant? Yunai looked at Nightblade god 10 Incense with a strange look. He already knew who he was talking about. Hey, who's your servant? I'm not. Hearing this, Toka immediately looked at Dustless with dissatisfaction, and said seriously, I'm not your servant, I'm just temporarily staying in your house. No, Coterie's house temporarily. Toka was very unwilling to resist. Dustless said that she was his servant in front of Janssen, and she felt embarrassed, so of course she had to refute this guy. That. At this time, Janssen tugged at Dustless's sleeve and said softly, I want to be your servant too, can you help me find Janssen? Seriously, this guy's luck is too good. Itsuka Coterie, who was secretly observing, was speechless. She was shocked to find that just because Dustless had destroyed the missile attack and helped the four elementals, her favorability towards Dustless had skyrocketed. Janssen's heart is weak, and she's just a child, so it's easy for her to rely on others. Rain Murasame was quite clear, and it was normal for her to have a favorable impression of someone who saved her. It was easy for a child to rely on others, especially a helpless child. What's the favorability of this elf team Chin now? Coterie asked curiously as she twitched the lollipop in her mouth. Around 60%. Rain Murasame nodded and then said seriously, if Dustless can really help her find her lost doll, her favorability would at least reach 80%, or even 90%. Really? Coterie was stunned, and then she waved her hand and said, we seem to be superfluous to Dustless. He doesn't seem to be good at dating, but he can always inadvertently win the favorability of the other party. Some things are just so magical. Rain Murasame also said with emotion, and it could only be said that it was fate. Damn it. Why is that kid still haunting us? Last time when we carried out the mission to kill the princess, we also encountered this unlucky guy. As expected, the AST members who were rushing over noticed Dustless. Their expressions changed drastically, especially Daybreak Prairie Fire and Kite One Origami. Their delicate faces froze one after another. Captain, do we still need to continue the mission? Toby Origami asked with a rare lack of confidence. Liaozi's mouth twitched a few times, and then she said helplessly, the mission ends here. When we go back, we will say that the enemy escaped. P.S. 3,000 flowers plus updates, 3,000 rewards plus updates, 1,000 comments plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates. Chapter 2085. The enemy ran away? The members of AST rolled their eyes when they heard this. The enemy was so close, yet she claimed that Dustless and the others ran away. Wasn't she lying through her teeth? However, even so, the other members of AST remained silent. It was obvious that they agreed with Blazing Sun's approach. Very well. When we return, report according to what I said. You guys discuss it and don't say anything wrong. Blazing Sun heaved a sigh of relief. She felt that the mountain hanging on her back had disappeared without a trace. It was not that Blazing Sun was afraid of Dustless, but the difference in strength between the two sides was too great. It was as simple as a cat toying with a mouse. The last time they captured the princess, Night Sword God Toka, they were played by Dustless. But he's really strange. Toichi Origami stared at Dustless. Her pupils dilated slightly. Where did this guy come from? I've never detected psychic waves, but the density of the two elves beside him is extremely high. Blazing Sun's expression was also very strange. She could not help but mutter, no psychic waves? Could it be that we were wrong from the beginning? Is he a human? But, since when were humans so powerful? Since when were humans able to roam the sky without the help of external forces? Since when were weak humans able to defeat the fully equipped AST? It was reasonable to say that Dustless was not an elf. By the way, I have a new mission to assign. Blazing Sun's eyes flashed. Blazing Sun's gaze swept across the members of AST one by one. Seeing the cowering eyes of her team members, she could not help but sigh in disappointment. It's difficult to achieve great things. Blazing Sun looked up at the sky and sighed. Blazing Sun's gaze turned to Toichi Origami, who had a calm expression. She then said with satisfaction, Origami, that kid, you'll be in charge of monitoring him from now on. Me. When Yue Origami heard this, her fair face showed a rare emotional fluctuation. She pouted her sandalwood lips. Thinking of Wuchan's character, she had a sad feeling that she wanted to cry but had no tears. Itsuka Kotori's home. Even though Kotori had expected some progress in the relationship between Dustless and Dustless, she didn't expect Dustless to bring her back. You didn't even ask for my permission to bring her back? Do you really think of Wu-Hee's family as your own? Itsuka Kotori always had a lollipop in her mouth. With her arms akimbo, she stared at Dustless who was sleeping on the sofa. This guy was really too arrogant. He brought a person back and didn't even greet him, the owner. It was simply outrageous. This entire planet is mine. Wuchan stretched and casually said. Not to mention your family. Wait until you can defeat me one day. Then you can come and fight against me. The strong will only use their fists to talk, and the weak will only talk arrogantly. What an unreasonable guy. Itsuka Kotori's jade-like finger trembled as she pointed at the shameless Wu Chun. She could only stare helplessly. Looking at that annoying face, she couldn't wait to slap it. Itsuka Kotori opened her mouth and was about to mock Dustless, but then she heard a calm voice. Sealing the power of the power, so that she can only feel shyness and other emotions? Why are you suddenly asking this? Itsuka Kotori looked at Dustless strangely and said seriously. Only Shido had this ability before, but now, Itsuka Kotori was also confused. When she checked Dustless's body, only he could seal the power of spirits. But strangely, when she checked Dustless's body, she got the same data as Itsuka Shido. In other words, Dustless could seal the power of spirits like Itsuka Shido. It's better to seal their power. Dustless looked at Toka and Yoshino and said impatiently, It's not a good thing to be too eye-catching. You know what I mean, right? Itsuka Kotori nodded. If he didn't seal their power, it would attract a bunch of cockroaches. But it's too embarrassing. Dustless's expression changed and his tone became strange. Let's just go with the flow. There were some things he wasn't good at, and he was already a few hundred years old. Time had already worn away his inner desires, so he didn't want to take the initiative to flirt with girls. Dong dong dong. At this moment, there was a dull knock on the door. Itsuka Shido is back? Dustless frowned and looked unhappy. I'll go take a look. Itsuka Kotori went to open the door in her slippers, but the person she saw made her frown. Toka Origami. Looking at the person in front of her, Itsuka Kotori was depressed and thought, is this guy going to fight me? We're neighbors from now on. I'm just here to say hi. The girl's face was expressionless as if she was talking about something normal. In fact, Toka Origami had been peeking at Dustless. Itsuka Kotori wasn't her target. Itsuka Kotori felt like she was being ignored. Toka Origami was talking to her, but she kept peeking at Dustless. Speaking of which, how did you become our neighbor? Itsuka Kotori raised her eyebrows as she recalled the main point of the story. You guys sure put in a lot of effort to keep an eye on me. Dustless sighed, but he didn't mind. AST was a government agency, and it was easy for them to buy the house near Itsuka Kotori's house. P.S. 3,000 fresh flowers plus more chapters, 3,000 rewards plus more chapters, 1,000 comments plus more chapters, 500 automatic subscriptions plus more chapters. Chapter 2086. How boring. Dustless shook his head. He laughed at AST's actions. In reality, he was just living the life of an ordinary person. He did not do anything out of the ordinary. Spying on them was pointless. If one day Dustless was annoyed, he could just kill them. It was like sending a lamb to a tiger's den. Let's get along peacefully in the future. Yuichi Origami left a sentence, then turned around and left, quite at ease. Live in peace with you around? Itsuka Kotori snorted disapprovingly, treating Tabichi Origami's words as a joke. She then muttered to herself, with AST around, can this world be peaceful? The organizations behind you are all the same. Dustless looked at Itsuka Kotori, and continued to drink his tea. There was no such thing as a clean organization. Bang! Itsuka Kotori slammed the door in annoyance. Those locusts from AST just won't go away. About what you said yesterday, I've changed my mind. Itsuka Kotori was stunned when she heard Dustless's cold voice. She looked at him blankly. She did not know what this guy was trying to do. About what happened yesterday? Itsuka Kotori frowned. She lowered her head and thought about what they talked about yesterday. Her eyes lit up and she said in surprise, "You're really going to go to school in Toka?" Itsuka Kotori had always wanted Toka to join the school. She hoped that she would be able to integrate into human society and learn about human culture, so that everyone could live in peace. Unfortunately, Dustless did not agree, so the matter was left unsettled. Until now, when Dustless suddenly spoke, Itsuka Kotori was surprised. I'm not as stubborn as you think. Wuchen looked at Itsuka Kotori seriously, and a strange light flashed in his eyes. Then he stated his condition. However, I have to join that school. You want to be a student too? Itsuka Kotori's face froze. She looked at Dustless suspiciously. She felt that this guy was up to something. No, forget about being a student. I'd rather be a teacher. Dustless shook his head. Forget about being a student. He was already a few hundred years old. It would be ridiculous for him to be a student. No one was qualified to teach him. The reason why Dustless chose to become a teacher was actually because he had his own goals. Since he had promised to help the four elements find the lost four kunai, he would definitely complete it. At that time, the four kunai were being hunted down by AST, and they were lost in the process. It was likely that the four kunai was in the hands of AST members. Since Kaichi Origami and Dustless were in the same school, it was natural for Dustless to contact her. 3 days later, in the morning, Dustless easily got a job as a physical education teacher. As for other subjects, Dustless was not suitable for it, nor was he interested in it. The atmosphere of the school. is really annoying. Entering the school again, Dustless didn't have any emotions. The only thing left was disgust. A centuries-old figure stepping into the school again was a really unpleasant feeling. Look, who is that? He seems to be walking towards the physical education teacher's office. Could it be the new physical education teacher? This time, the principal finally has a conscience. He finally found a handsome physical education teacher. The group of students stared at Dustless in astonishment. Some of them even showed an expression of infatuation, and there were quite a few of them. Dustless felt helpless. He couldn't help but sigh. Sometimes being handsome was a sin. Hey, you're the new physical education teacher, right? At this moment, a rather light voice suddenly sounded. It was very pleasant to the ears, as pleasant as the sound of nature. The seductive voice made people want to hurry up and strike up a conversation, as if it was filled with magic. Who is it? Curious, Dustless looked back. He had heard too many pleasant voices. The only thing that surprised him was that this pleasant voice sounded familiar. It's you. A graceful figure appeared in front of his eyes. An unexpected figure appeared in front of him. Dustless's pupils suddenly shrunk slightly, and a strong sense of disbelief flashed through his eyes. Isn't this Tokisaki Kurumi? Why is she in this school now? According to the development of the original work, it should be some time later. Dustless's face was full of puzzlement, and his brain power was somewhat overdrawn. It seems that my arrival has caused a butterfly effect. Some things have changed. Dustless muttered, and at the same time, he glanced at the smiling girl. Her appearance was peerless, her temperament was bewitching, and her eyes were like spring water. Her every move exuded charm, and between her frown and smile, one's thoughts seemed to be controlled by her, and one could not help but follow her thoughts. What a living seductress! Dustless sighed in his heart. Even though he had a calm mind for many years, he could not help but be aroused. To be able to make a centuries-old monster like Dustless feel desire, it was enough to show how charming Tokisaki Kurumi was. Phew! After taking a deep breath, Dustless's heart calmed down, and his eyes regained some clarity. Then, under Dustless's puzzled gaze, Tokisaki Kurumi slightly bowed to him politely. I'm also a new transfer student. Teacher, please take care of me. My name is Tokisaki Kurumi, and I'm an elf. P.S. 3,000 flowers plus updates, 3,000 rewards plus updates, 1,000 comments plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates. Chapter 2087. The only thing that surprised Dustless was that Tokisaki Kurumi actually took the initiative to approach him. Dustless didn't think that he was her target. This guy seems to want to fuse with Itsuka Shido. Staring at the smiling girl, Dustless frowned slightly. Her smile was like a spring breeze, making people want to open their hearts to her and confide in her. Not to mention being wary of her, it was a feeling of wanting to bow down to her. Tokisaki Kurumi's eyes narrowed into crescents. Her smile was sincere and polite. If Dustless wasn't a transmigrator, he might have been fooled by Tokisaki Kurumi. The girl's bright and gentle smile made it hard for people to doubt her. That's right. I'm your new physical education teacher. What can I do for you? Dustless's tone was indifferent. There was even a hint of rejection and disgust. As the saying goes, a weasel pays a visit to a chicken with bad intentions. Tokisaki Kurumi was exactly like that. She took the initiative to talk to Dustless for no good reason. Dustless couldn't even be polite to someone who had designs on him. What's with this guy's attitude? That's right. Don't tell me he's putting on an act for others? He's too pretentious. The surrounding students saw this scene and felt injustice for Tokisaki Kurumi. From their point of view, for such a cute girl to take the initiative to talk to Dustless, this guy's ancestors must have burned incense and prayed to the Bodhisattva for protection. The heavens must have given Dustless face. But now his indifferent attitude made everyone jealous. This guy is too insensible. Isn't he just a little handsome? Why is he putting on airs? The surrounding students looked at Dustless unhappily and couldn't help but curse him. This guy actually dared to treat a gentle beauty like Tokisaki Kurumi coldly. He really deserved a beating. This bunch of idiots. Dustless was speechless when he saw everyone looking at him like he was an idiot. It would be fine if Tokisaki Kurumi was here to strike up a conversation, but it was clear that she had ill intentions. She was about to swallow him alive, yet he was still smiling at her so foolishly. Wasn't that an idiot? This guy. Tokisaki Kurumi was also in a daze. To be honest, she was very confident in her appearance. When she took the initiative to talk to others, they would usually be overjoyed. Only Dustless was an exception. Staring at Dustless, Tokisaki Kurumi's interest was piqued. "Sensei, may I know your name?" Tokisaki Kurumi bowed slightly and maintained her gentle smile. Dustless glanced at her, nodded and said, "My name is Dustless. I'll be the physical education teacher of this school from now on. If there's nothing else, I'll leave first." Ouch! At this moment, Tokisaki Kurumi's face suddenly changed. Her rosy face instantly turned as white as snow. She looked extremely weak, as if she was sick. "You're not feeling well?" Dustless frowned and reminded her in a serious tone. "If you're not feeling well, you should rest at home." Dustless sneered in his heart. "Isn't this a little too fast? You were fine before and now you're sick?" "Sorry, I've been anemic since I was young. Sometimes I feel dizzy." Tokisaki Kurumi revealed an apologetic look and shyly looked at Dustless. "Sensei, why don't you help me to the infirmary?" "Infirmary?" Wuchun frowned slightly. Soon after, he glanced at the weak young lady in an extremely bored manner. Subsequently, he left in a carefree manner under everyone's stunned gazes. "Sorry, I don't have time, and I don't know where the infirmary is. Please find someone else." After saying that, Dustless's figure gradually disappeared into the crowd, leaving behind a dumbfounded Tokisaki Kurumi. "This guy is called Dustless, huh? Interesting, this is the first time I've seen someone who isn't interested in me." Tokisaki Kurumi licked her lips as a strange light flashed in her eyes. Prey that liked to struggle was actually the most interesting. Those who meekly submitted to adversity were, on the other hand, boring. Other than Itsuka Shido, I didn't expect there to be another interesting guy. "I think he's the PE teacher in my class," Tokisaki Kurumi softly muttered as she looked at Dustless's back. Her gem-like eyes blossomed with beautiful colors. Despite being rejected by Dustless, Tokisaki Kurumi's delicate face didn't show the slightest bit of disappointment. Instead, she was grinning from ear to ear as if she had found a fun toy and skipped away. In fact, it was just as Dustless thought. Tokisaki Kurumi came to this school for Itsuka Shido. She dreamed of becoming one with him. What a boring woman. Although you're pretty, you think too highly of yourself. Dustless looked back at the girl's figure. Despite being separated by a sea of people, Tokisaki Kurumi's figure was clearly exposed. Dustless couldn't help but shake his head. Dustless has seen many beautiful women. Although Tokisaki Kurumi was like a poison that made people want to put their hands in front of their mouths, hundreds of years of experience had already obliterated some of the primitive ambitions in Dustless's heart. He only had one impression of Tokisaki Kurumi. She was very ordinary. Moreover, in Dustless's opinion, Tokisaki Kurumi was an unmistakable jinx. Whoever she looked for would be unlucky, as if they were possessed by bad luck. Dustless wasn't talking nonsense. She would only target people that she was interested in, and those that Tokisaki Kurumi was interested in had all turned into corpses. P.S. 3,000 flowers plus updates, 3,000 rewards plus updates, 1,000 comments plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates. Chapter 2088. In fact, Tokisaki Kurumi didn't take the initiative to talk to Dustless. She had her own intentions. Before this, Tokisaki Kurumi had inquired about Itsuka Shido. Unfortunately, for some unknown reason, Itsuka Shido was kicked out of his home. As for the reason, the instigator was none other than Wuchun. Tokisaki Kurumi had always been puzzled about the reason. Until today, she was still puzzled. Itsuka Shido was such an important person, yet he was kicked out of his home. She was curious about the reason behind it. I will see through your conspiracy sooner or later." Tokisaki Kurumi no longer hesitated, and walked toward the school building. The farce came to an end. On the other side, Thank you, Mr. Principal. Take care, I won't see you out. In the empty school building, Dustless sent the principal off with a smile. He then turned around and stared at the beautiful girl with dark circles under her eyes. Pardon me for asking, but does it have anything to do with you that I may pee? Teacher? I say, aren't you guys overstepping your boundaries? Dustless looked at the silver-haired girl and asked curiously. Taking a closer look, this person's appearance was rather perfect, and her figure was not bad either. Her breasts were curvaceous, and her delicate white skin was tinged with red. Her pink lips were as fragrant as the fragrance of roses, making people unable to resist the urge to go up and take a bite. However, the only flaw was the dark circles under her eyes, which seriously affected her beauty. Rain, you can go back. There's nothing for you to do here. Also, tell Itsuka Kotori to mind her own business. Dustless waved his hand and impatiently ordered her to leave. He then said, the 4 elemental plushie might be in Tokichi Origami in AST. I'll leave after I get it. However, Murasame Rain just smiled and didn't care. From now on, I'll be your assistant. Please give me your guidance. Little Chun. No, Dustless, Mr. Dustless. Let's get along peacefully in the future. Murasame Rain looked at Dustless's eyes, and finally quickly changed her words. If she called Dustless Little Chun, she didn't know why. She always felt very strange. Even though Dustless looked young and immature, the vicissitudes of life in his eyes and his carefree attitude towards everything did not seem like something a youth should possess. Assistant. Dustless rolled his eyes and said snappily, do whatever you want. I've already asked you to go back. Don't complain to me if anything happens in the future. Then Wuchen sat at his desk and flipped through today's class schedule. Coincidentally, he found that the next PE class was Atoka Shido's class. You're giving me a pillow when I'm sleepy. Maybe I can resign and go home after a day as a PE teacher. Dustless stretched out, and a few playful arcs appeared on his face. It's good to tease young people occasionally. Looking at the playground outside the window, Dustless said to himself, you're not that old. Murasame Rain didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Dustless looked like he was only 18 or 19 years old. He was very young, but he spoke like he was young and mature. He gave people the feeling of a super old monster coming out of the coffin. By the way, it's worth mentioning that Toka also entered the school, and she is in the same class as Shido. Murasame Rain suddenly said, this should be arranged by Kotori and Itsuka, right? Frowning slightly, Dustless's tone was a bit low, and a strange color flashed on his cheeks. His bright eyes were flickering with thought-provoking light. You shouldn't be. As if discovering a new world, Murasame Rain looked at Dustless with a very shocked look. Suddenly she smiled and teased Dustless. You shouldn't be jealous of Shido and Toka being in the same class. Really, I thought you were a serious monk before. It turns out that you also have 7 emotions and 6 desires. Jealous. Wuchen laughed involuntarily. What was there in this worthless world that was worthy of his jealousy? What was there that he couldn't get? Was there a need to be jealous of Shido? What was so special about him? Even if he had the unique ability to seal spirits, Dustless got it. Being jealous of Shido was completely empty. What I'm worried about is... Walking to the window, Wuchen looked at the rows of teaching buildings not far away and suddenly smiled. I want to tell you that the relationship between Toka and Atoka Shido is very bad. I just hope that Toka won't suddenly pull out a sword to kill Atoka Shido after seeing him. Murasame Rain was stunned by Dustless's answer. After thinking about it carefully, what Dustless said was not unreasonable. When Ido Shido attacked Toka for the first time, it angered him. If it wasn't for Dustless, Ido Shido would have been killed by Toka. In fact, it was just as Dustless had guessed. In the classroom on the other side, Toka had just met Atoka Shido, and the two instantly had sparks. Why are you here? The Night Sword God Toka glared at Atoka Shirdao with displeasure. When Atoka Shirdao started sweating, she said angrily, being with a loser like you is really bad luck. What kind of evil thing did Shido do? Itsuka Kotori, who was in charge of monitoring Toka, was speechless. She was shocked to find that before meeting Shido, Toka's good mood was around 80%, but after meeting Shido, it almost dropped to 0. Did I offend you? It's none of my business. Itoka Shido looked at the angry night sword god Toko with a sad face. He couldn't help but curse in his heart. He felt like he had been shot while lying down. He hadn't done anything to provoke this fierce girl. P.S. 3,000 flowers plus updates, 3,000 rewards plus updates, 1,000 comments plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates. Chapter 2089. Go Shido wanted to cry, but had no tears. He said that he really didn't provoke Yato Toho, but he didn't know why Toho was against him, which really made Go Shido angry. It seems that I was right, these two people are really difficult to get along. Dustless's eyes narrowed into a crescent moon, and the corners of his mouth raised gently, with a faint gloating smile on his face. Although the distance was quite far, for him who had Sharingan, this was not a big problem, it was just a small matter. It was worth mentioning that the development of the current world was not the world of the original work. The encounter between Go Shido and Yato Toho was completely ruined by Dustless, and the relationship between the two was extremely unpleasant. Of course, all of this was because of Wu Chen's mischief. They were originally a pair of immortal companions, yet they'd already become natural enemies that couldn't tolerate each other. All of this is because of you. Murasame Rain snorted discontentedly, and there was a rare trace of blame on her tired cheeks. Because of me? Hearing this, Dustless snorted and said, Maybe it's because of me, but please don't forget, if it wasn't because of me, this city would have been destroyed by Yato Toho. That's right. Murasame Rain opened her mouth, and her throat seemed to be stuffed with a piece of bone, and it was difficult to continue to speak. She was speechless by Dustless's words. Dustless's words may be a bit alarmist, but it was undeniable that this was an out-and-out fact. It's one thing to be strong, but Wu Chun is really eloquent. Murasame Rain sighed, and then sighed helplessly. Now Yato Toho was still angry, so it was better not to provoke her. I don't seem to have offended you. Inside the classroom, Itsuka Shido looked at Toko with fear. To be honest, he was really scared by her power. After all, one was an elf, and the other was a human. Also, Itsuka Shido had seen the battle between Dustless and Toka Shido. Toka Shido was terrified. That night sword god. The teacher couldn't stand it anymore. Just as he was about to stop the two of them, a crisp bell suddenly rang. Ding ding ding. The bell signaling the end of class rang through the entire corridor. The originally quiet school instantly became noisy. I'll deal with you next time. Just you wait. She glared fiercely at Ohei Shirdao, then turned around and left arrogantly. Everyone in the class looked at this proud girl in shock. Remembering Dustless's orders, Nightblade God 10 Incense skipped away. This guy. Seeing Toka's figure, Itsuka Shido breathed a sigh of relief and muttered gloomily. Is it because of what happened last time that she's so hostile toward me? When Nightblade God 10 Incense first came to this world, Kotori asked Itsuka Shido to talk to Nightblade God 10 Incense. However, Shido's luck was not good. Dustless happened to attack Nightblade God 10 Incense at that time, and Nightblade God 10 Incense, who didn't know it, put the blame on Itsuka Shido. Therefore, when the two sides met, there was a strong smell of gunpowder. If it wasn't for Dustless at that time, Itsuka Shido might have died. In the sports office. You silly girl. Wu Chen looked at Nightblade God 10 Incense speechlessly and scolded angrily. I asked you to get Kite Origami's words and ask where the Forfune is. I didn't ask you to come to me now. Dustless didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He shouldn't have asked such a serious question to Nightblade God 10 Incense. If she didn't do it right, Nightblade God 10 Incense might find out what she said. Forget it, I'll just find a chance to extract Nightblade God 10 Incense's memory. Dustless waved his hand and looked at Nightblade God 10 Incense impatiently. Go back to class, Nightblade God 10 Incense. I'll take care of Nightblade God 10 Incense. I'll be your new teacher in the next PE class. Don't be late. Suddenly, Nightblade God 10 Incense opened her mouth and looked at Dustless expectantly. Shouldn't it be? Seeing this, the corner of Wu Chen's mouth twitched. He scolded angrily. Little girl, don't tell me you starved to death in your previous life. You just finished your breakfast not long ago, right? Can you eat so much? You let me work, but you don't give me food. This is called docking the wages of laborers. I can sue you. Nightblade God 10 Incense said seriously with a pout. Even laborers come out. As an elf, you really keep up with the times. Did you give her all these? Dustless looked at Murasame Rain gloomily, and the latter just shook her head in a daze. It seemed that she was about to fall asleep. Forget it, take it. Pointing to the transparent belt on the table, which was full of lunchboxes and various snacks, Dustless sighed. As for Nightblade God 10 Incense, I'll do it. Dustless's eyes narrowed. He just needed to find a suitable opportunity to extract her memory. In this way he could find the whereabouts of Shinoichi Origami. Dustless could also retire from this school. The ability of Rinnegan could extract the memory of others, but it would only hurt the soul of the other party. But after several years of use, Dustless's control of Rinnegan had reached an incredible level. Even if he used the eye power to search the other party's memory, it would not hurt their soul. P.S. 3,000 flowers plus updates, 3,000 rewards plus updates, 1,000 evaluation votes plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates. Chapter 2090. Ding ding ding. The bell rang, signaling the start of class. The noisy school quieted down once again. The spacious field was filled with people, including Dustless and a few other familiar faces. You're on time. Dustless walked over from afar with a frivolous and lazy expression. He held his head in his hands and held a blade of grass in his mouth. He wore a white tracksuit and had a faint smile on his face. Compared to the teacher, Dustless looked more like he was taking a stroll. This new PE teacher is actually late for his first class. Does he even care about us? He's not serious at all. The bell rang for 5 minutes, but Dustless was still nowhere to be seen. This caused a group of students to be dissatisfied, and they all started to complain. A bunch of brats are dissatisfied with me. A teasing tone suddenly brushed past everyone's ears. Everyone subconsciously looked over, and a young face entered everyone's ears. Dustless. A few people who knew Dustless were shocked. For example, Tabichi Origami and Itoka Shido were also in disbelief. Today is really strange. Itoka Shido muttered. Shido muttered to himself. 2 strange transfer students came out of nowhere, and even Wuxia entered this school and became a teacher. The 2 transfer students were naturally Toka and Tokisaki Kurumi. Ah, this is really interesting. Tokisaki Kurumi tilted her head with a strange light in her eyes. How dare you be dissatisfied with your teacher? Now run 10 laps around the field. Dustless ordered seriously. In his previous life he envied teachers who gave orders. Ha! Are you kidding? The students all stared at Dustless with their eyes wide open. Although they were dissatisfied, they still ran. Many girls ran over to Dustless to ask for leave. Dustless also nodded in agreement. After all, they were on their menstrual cycle. He couldn't just ignore it. Why did you refuse my leave? Dustless, you must have done it on purpose. Yi Daoshin Shixiang glared at Dustless. Her perfect face was filled with displeasure. Other girls could take leave but she couldn't. How preposterous. Everyone is different, Yi Zichin said. Dustless glanced at Nightblade God Toka and said seriously, unless your period comes, I can give you time to rest. What's menstruation? Nightblade God Toka was confused. How dare you ask for leave when you don't even know this? Dustless rolled his eyes and pointed at the field. Nightblade God 10 Fragrances, just run 20 laps around the field. How dare you? 25 laps. I don't want to. 30 laps then. Dustless, you win. Just wait and see. Nightblade God 10 Fragrances stomped her feet. She looked like she wanted to swallow Dustless alive. However, she gave in the end. Dustless was her teacher, and she wasn't as strong as Dustless. Nightblade God 10 Fragrances once disobeyed Dustless's orders. The consequences were disastrous. After Dustless suppressed her, she was stripped naked and exposed for hours. Although it was at home, Nightblade God 10 Fragrances still lost face. From then on, Dustless began to threaten her. If she disobeyed, He would strip her naked and throw her clothes on the street. Since then, Nightblade God 10 Fragrances didn't dare to disobey Dustless's orders. Although his methods were despicable, the effect was unparalleled. Nightblade God 10 Fragrances never disobeyed Dustless's orders again. What are you doing here? Tokizaki-san. Dustless lazily sat on the grass as he stared at Toshiaki Kurumi. He yawned and said casually, "Are you on leave as well? Are you also on your menstrual cycle? Do you have any evidence?" This guy is really shameless. Although she maintained a warm and bright smile on her face, Toshiaki Kurumi was cursing Dustless in her heart. Her period was here. What evidence did he need? Wasn't he just trying to make things difficult for her? How dare you fight with me? Dustless glanced at Toshiaki Kurumi and laughed in his heart. Don't think I don't know that you're on leave because you want to get close to Itsuka Shido. What period? T. Toshiaki Kurumi came to this school for one person, Itsuka Shido. She dreamed of the day when she and Itsuka Shido would become one. Even so, Dustless underestimated Toshiaki Kurumi and her boldness. The clear chirping of birds could be heard from the blue sky. The cool wind blew from afar, and the willow branches danced in the wind. Since Dustless and Toshiaki Kurumi were so close to each other, some of her hair was blown onto Dustless's face. It smells good. Dustless took a whiff and said subconsciously, "Teacher, I have proof that my menstrual cycle is here." At this moment, Tokizaki Kurumi looked at the dazed Wuchen with a smile. You can even prove something like that? Elves are indeed different from the rest. Dustless was stunned when he heard Toshiaki Kurumi's answer. Just as he was about to ask, Toshiaki Kurumi's next move shocked Dustless. Toshiaki Kurumi lifted her uniform skirt and revealed her white fat too. Don't tell me. Seeing this, a trace of emotion flashed across Wuchen's face. He finally understood how Tokizaki Kurumi proved that her period had arrived. Taking off her fat too just because of a disagreement. This Toshiaki Kurumi is really bold. Dustless couldn't help but sigh. If it was any other environment, he could still accept it. However, they were in a public field. Toshiaki Kurumi actually wanted to take off her fat too in front of Dustless. Her boldness was enough to make anyone blush with shame. P.S. 3,000 fresh flowers plus more chapters, 3,000 rewards plus more chapters, 1,000 comments plus more chapters, 500 automatic subscriptions plus more chapters. Ugh. Chapter 2091. Her white breasts were smooth and flawless, causing one's imagination to run wild. Even Dustless, who had been calm for many years, felt ripples in his heart at this moment. Long stockings wrapped around her white thighs, revealing her flawless skin that was as exquisite as jade. Under the black stockings, her jade-like legs were faintly discernible, causing one's heartstrings to throb. Unknowingly, Dustless's breathing had quickened. You really dare to take it off? His aggressive gaze circled around Toshiaki Kuzo's trousers. Dustless's lips curled into a rare smile. In all fairness, Dustless didn't believe that Toshiaki Kuzo would be so daring as to take off her breasts in public. Only an idiot would do that. But even so, for the sake of being on the safe side, Dustless still secretly set up a gray barrier to prevent others from spying. This guy, Toshiaki Kuzo, revealed her white breasts. When she saw that Dustless wasn't moved, she felt vexed and couldn't help but mutter, "Does this guy really want me to take off my breasts in front of him?" Toshiaki Kuzo was secretly depressed. She thought that it was just for show, but who would have thought that Dustless would look at her with such anticipation? If such a person could be a teacher, he was simply a beast in human face. "Student Toshiaki, how are you going to prove to me that your period is here?" Seeing Toshiaki Kuzo in a difficult position, Dustless held back his laughter and pretended to be calm. "If you don't prove it, I'll punish you by making you run 100 laps around the field." 100 laps. Hearing this, Toshiaki Kuzo's face flashed with anger. Her eyes clearly emitted a haze. Even though it was just a flash, Dustless caught it clearly. 1 lap around the school field was about 500 meters. 100 laps would be 500 by 100, which was almost 50,000 meters. You did it on purpose, didn't you? Finally, Tokisaki Kurumi could no longer maintain his composure and coldly said, "Brat, do you know how the word death is written?" Looking at Dustless's despicable face, Tokisaki Kurumi was certain that Dustless was doing this on purpose. "I really don't know how to write the word death." Dustless nodded. He looked at Tokisaki Kurumi and said seriously, "Why don't you teach me? This guy really doesn't know what's good for him." Hearing this, Tokisaki Kurumi was enraged. His calm eyes flashed with a savage light. He took out a spear and aimed it at Dustless. He laughed sinisterly. "Very well, I'll tell you how death is written. It's written with your blood." It was no wonder that Tokisaki Kurumi was so angry. Other girls could ask for leave if they were on their period, but when it was her turn, she had to strip off her fatness to verify her identity. How could she be so shameless? "You're on your period and you have a bad temper. Shoot me." Dustless lazily slept on the grass with his eyes closed. He said casually, "Tokisaki Kurumi, no, it's more appropriate to call you Incubus. That seems to be your code name. If you start a fight here, it'll be very difficult for you to sneak into this school in the future. You know I'm an elf." Hearing this, Tokisaki Kurumi's pupils shrank. Her body instinctively moved away from Dustless. "You're really forgetful. When we first met, didn't you take the initiative to introduce yourself as an elf? What a slow-witted girl." Dustless shook his head and picked up a blade of grass out of boredom. "How dare you mock me when I'm pointing a spear at you? You're just a mere human. How dare you?" Hearing this, Tokisaki Kurumi's expression turned cold and pulled the trigger. Bang! A large bullet was fired from the spear and headed straight for Dustless's head. "Goodbye, foolish human." Tokisaki Kurumi blew out a breath of hot air charmingly. A morbid smile appeared on her face as she stared straight at Dustless. She was enjoying the beauty of a dying person. When a person was about to die, they would reveal an unprecedented fear. This was also Tokisaki Kurumi's favorite moment. Poochie. The bullet tore through Dustless's head and pierced through it. The wound was large enough to fit an adult's fist. "How boring. At least let me admire your pitiful expression when you die. It'll be nice to have a memory." Tokisaki Kurumi was unhappy. Dustless remained calm until the moment of his death. "Then do you remember my pitiful expression?" A ghostly indifferent voice sounded out of nowhere. Then, a cold wind blew behind her. Fear flashed through Tokisaki Kurumi's eyes as she turned around and fired without hesitation. Bang! Another large bullet flew out and hit the bullseye. An obvious hole appeared on the head of the person who spoke. One had to admit that Tokisaki Kurumi's marksmanship was indeed amazing. Even if she didn't look at the target, she could still explode the opponent's head with just her intuition. However, the strange thing was that even though the person's head was blown off and the bullet pierced through his left eye, his body was still standing firmly. His right eye was still quietly looking at Tokisaki Kurumi. His breathing was even and he was very calm. His delicate face stared straight at Tokisaki Kurumi. "You're not dead." Tokisaki Kurumi's tone was several times louder as she looked at Dustless in horror. After being shot in the head, this guy was still standing there as if nothing had happened. Was this still a weak human? If Dustless was an elf, he didn't have psychic waves and there had never been a male elf before. What kind of monster was this guy? "Didn't you say you were going to teach me how to write the word death? Haven't you finished it yet? What a lousy language teacher. P.S. 3,000 flowers plus updates, 3,000 rewards plus updates, 1,000 comments plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates." Chapter 2092. I underestimated him. Looking at the lazy Dustless cautiously, Tokisaki Kurumi felt a rare headache. She frowned when she saw the gap in Dustless's eye and her eyebrows were almost knitted together. Could it be that this guy can recover from any skill? Tokisaki Kurumi muttered to herself. Even though she spoke softly, the slick Dustless heard every word. "Recover? Wrong." Dustless shook his head and explained softly, "You've never injured me, so how can you recover? This is just the elemental ability of the glint fruit. It can ignore all physical attacks." Ignore physical attacks? Tokisaki Kurumi was the first to recover from her shock. Her first reaction was to laugh out loud, mocking Dustless for overestimating himself. How could a mere mortal have such a heaven-defying ability like ignore physical attacks? What else could it be other than the ravings of a lunatic? That was simply wishful thinking. Surrender, and I can give you a good job. Dustless's tone revealed a rare trace of gentleness. His expression was also very serious. Good job? Hearing this, Tokisaki Kurumi was stunned for a moment before she sneered. You know that I'm an elf, right? Do you think there's any job in this world that's suitable for elves? Tokisaki Kurumi sneered at the end of her sentence. In this world, no matter who it was, they hated elves. After all, every time they appeared, they would cause a lot of trouble. They were almost synonymous with hate. This was especially true for the Eurasian air disaster that happened decades ago. It had taken the lives of hundreds of millions of people. Other people don't have jobs suitable for elves, but I do. Staring at Tokisaki Kurumi, Dustless smiled mysteriously and said seriously, I already have 2 servants, Yansei and Toka. Why don't you? Bang bang bang. However, before Dustless could continue his nonsense, a series of bullets were fired at him. Poochie, poochie, poochie. Just like before, Dustless didn't dodge and allowed the bullet to pierce through his head. If an ordinary person's head was smashed and a few large holes appeared, they would naturally die without a doubt. However, there were exceptions to everything. In Dustless's head, after a few seconds, the wound was covered by light and quickly healed. New skin grew. Damn it, could it really ignore physical attacks? Tokisaki Kurumi clicked her tongue. Her eyes were fixed on Dustless, revealing a look of deep shock. Why would such a godlike ability appear in the hands of a gigolo? Tokisaki Kurumi pouted as she spoke in a sour tone. She was like a jealous little wife who had been scolded. There are many things you don't understand, such as this. Dustless turned into a stream of light and rushed out. This damn pervert. Seeing the incoming light, Tokisaki Kurumi was shocked, and her beautiful eyes were filled with panic. Dustless's speed was something that even an elf like her couldn't achieve, let alone a human. In her panic, Tokisaki Kurumi quickly pulled the trigger again. Bang bang bang. Several more bullets flew out and pierced through Dustless's body. Swish swish swish. But what was strange and puzzling was that even after being attacked, the speed of the light didn't change. The dazzling light continued to rush towards her. Can he really ignore physical attacks? Tokisaki Kurumi was helpless. Dustless's body was transparent. Even if she could see him, she couldn't hit him. All attacks were ineffective against him. Damn it, I didn't expect to use my true strength to deal with a human. Tokisaki Kurumi was unresigned. She seemed to be unhappy that she lost to a human. After all, there was a difference between humans and elves. But today, Tokisaki Kurumi was teased by an ordinary, human like Wuchen. Especially Wuchen's disdainful tone and unyielding attitude made her feel uncomfortable. She was clearly looking down on others. Being suppressed by a human made Tokisaki Kurumi unhappy and aggrieved. Finally, after gathering all her emotions, Tokisaki Kurumi decided to use her true strength to teach Dustless a lesson. Boom boom boom. Tokisaki Kurumi's young and tender body suddenly erupted with a powerful energy fluctuation. Following that, her outer clothes burst apart and turned into a black and blood-red dress. At the same time, a huge clock hung behind Tokisaki Kurumi's back. Is this your angelic form? Dustless rubbed his chin with interest and said expectantly, Your ability seems to be called Carving Emperor, right? I remember that you can reverse time, teleport, and even slow down time. How do you know so much about my ability? Who told you that? Tokisaki Kurumi's eyes widened. It was hard to believe that Dustless was making it up. If that was the case, it would be too much of a coincidence. Everything Dustless said was true. That's not important. Dustless waved his arm and moved his thumb gently. Bring it on. Little Dud is going to release your most beautiful light. Don't ask me why, because this is your best performance. P.S. 3,000 fresh flowers plus more chapters, 3,000 rewards plus more chapters, 1,000 comments plus more chapters, 500 automatic subscriptions plus more chapters. Chapter 2093. Even if you want to be arrogant, you should know when to stop. Tokisaki Kurumi's eyes were filled with hostility. Dustless's domineering tone was as if he was declaring ownership of an item, completely ignoring the feelings of others. This arrogant tone gave Tokisaki Kurumi the illusion that she was someone else's possession. Repent for your sins. Tokisaki Kurumi glared at Dustless as she suddenly aimed the rifle at her own head and pulled the trigger. One bullet. Bang. Without a doubt, Tokisaki Kurumi ended up with a headshot. But strangely, the moment her head was hit, Tokisaki Kurumi disappeared without a trace. This is... Dustless frowned as he began to look around. Go to hell. At this moment, a black shadow suddenly appeared in front of him. Dustless felt a cold sensation on his forehead. He looked up and saw a black muzzle aimed at his head. This is teleportation? Dustless's lips trembled as a rare fluctuation of emotion appeared in his voice. Farewell. Bang. With a sinister laugh, Tokisaki Kurumi decisively pulled the trigger. Pucci. Since the muzzle was aimed at Dustless's head, it was aimed at his forehead. The moment the bullet left the rifle, it tore apart Dustless's head. The penetrated head did not splatter brain matter as expected. Instead, a large amount of photons surged out from the wound. There was not even a trace of blood, let alone bright red brain matter. Damn it! Seeing this, Tokisaki Kurumi stomped her feet in anger. As I said before, I'm a flash person who ate the glint fruit. I can elementalize. This kind of pure physical attack is just asking for humiliation. Dustless shook his head as the wound on his forehead began to heal. I didn't expect you to be able to teleport. Dustless looked at Tokisaki Kurumi in surprise. He lowered his head and thought about her ability before shaking his head. No, it's not teleportation. It's time acceleration. You know very well. Tokisaki Kurumi's face tensed up. She had mixed feelings in her heart. She wanted to cry but had no tears. Her trick was seen through just once, and this feeling was truly unpleasant. But so what if you can see through it? Can you block it? Looking at Dustless with disdain, Tokisaki Kurumi aimed at her own head again. She was extremely confident. What an ignorant little girl. Dustless shook his head and sighed. Soon after, he raised a finger. If I wanted to kill you, you would have been killed 1,000 times within a minute. Under the speed of light, everything was laughable. You can try if you can. If you can stop me, I don't mind agreeing to your barbaric conditions. After all, the strong are the masters of this world. Tokisaki Kurumi charmingly smiled. Although her words sounded nice, her eyes were filled with contempt. She clearly didn't put Dustless in her eyes. Bang! Tokisaki Kurumi pulled the trigger again. The bullet from the rifle flew towards Dustless's head. At the same time, Dustless's figure gradually lost its texture and turned into a stream of light that rushed out. How fast was the bullet? That wasn't important. What was certain was that the bullet would pierce through Tokisaki Kurumi's head the moment it left the gun barrel. But what made Tokisaki Kurumi dumbfounded was that after a few seconds, she was also fine. Where was the bullet? Out of curiosity, Tokisaki Kurumi looked over. It would have been better if she didn't look. After witnessing this shocking scene, Tokisaki Kurumi's pupils shrunk. Her beautiful eyes were filled with deep shock. She saw a seemingly delicate arm easily catch a golden bullet between her middle finger and index finger. She shifted her gaze and looked at the owner of the arm. The culprit was Dustless. Swish, swish, swish. After being stunned for a few seconds, Tokisaki Kurumi hurriedly retreated. Fortunately, I reacted fast enough. Otherwise, I would have been killed by this guy. After putting some distance between herself and Dustless, Tokisaki Kurumi heaved a sigh of relief. You reacted fast enough? The cold voice carried with it a cold wind. Tokisaki Kurumi immediately shivered. This feeling was no different from falling into an ice cave. It was suffocating. Who is it? Tokisaki Kurumi raised her head in fear, being stared at by this ruthless gaze. She felt like she was wandering in hell. What a boastful little girl. The cold voice sounded again, reflecting endless ridicule and disdain. It's you. Following the source of the voice, she saw Dustless. Your reaction is fast? You think too highly of yourself. In front of the speed of light, Do you think your fast reaction is useful? I really don't know where your morbid confidence comes from. What a joke. Any move under the speed of light was futile. Child's play. Dustless threw out the rifle bullet in his hand. He crossed his arms and said lazily, "Carving Emperor's long needle and short needle are ancient rifles and pistols respectively. They fire Carving Emperor's ability as bullets. If the bullet doesn't hit the target, you won't be able to activate your ability. In other words, the moment you fire the bullet, I can completely stop it," Dustless said confidently. The bullet was fast, but it was still a far cry from the speed of light. This guy. Tokisaki Kurumi's expression changed. Her hair on both sides of her temples was covered in water droplets. If it was in the past, Tokisaki Kurumi would have treated this as a joke. However, looking at Carving Emperor's bullet on the ground, Tokisaki Kurumi couldn't laugh. This bullet was intercepted by Dustless. It was the bullet she fired. The moment it was about to shatter her head, it was intercepted by Dustless. If the bullet couldn't hit the target and Carving Emperor's ability couldn't be activated, then Tokisaki Kurumi, an elf, became immortal. P.S. 3,000 flowers plus updates, 3,000 rewards plus updates, 1,000 comments plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates. Chapter 2094. In this world, there was no invincible ability. Every ability had a flaw that no one knew about. It was invincible now because no one had discovered its weakness. For example, Dustless's glinting fruit, elementization, ability was invincible in this world, but in the previous world where pirates were everywhere, they could easily touch Dustless's body, such as armament hockey and sea stone. The reason why Tokisaki Kurumi could run rampant in the past was because she hadn't met a natural enemy. But this time, she was unlucky. She didn't look at the almanac when she went out and met a powerful enemy like Dustless. My chances of winning are slim, maybe even none. Tokisaki Kurumi was quite unwilling to give up. She calculated the chances of winning, and helplessly found that she didn't have the ability to fight Dustless. Dustless's speed was faster than the speed of a bullet. In other words, he could easily defeat Tokisaki Kurumi before she used her ability. Blocking the bullet with his bare hands was the best example. I lost. She threw away the two guns in her hand and seemed to have accepted her fate. It wasn't that she wanted to surrender. The ability of Emperor was actually a bullet. If it couldn't hit the target, the ability couldn't be used. Kill me if you have the guts. Even if she was at her wit's end, Tokisaki Kurumi still bit her thin lips and looked at Dustless very stubbornly. She sneered. "If you don't kill me, I won't let you go and harass you for the rest of your life." As her voice fell, Tokisaki Kurumi's different colored eyes flashed with a cold chill. She threatened. "Not only you, but also your two little servants, Night Sword God Toka and Yoshino. I will bury them with me." Harass me for the rest of my life? Hearing this, Dustless's expression was extremely strange. He said sarcastically, "I remember that you didn't want to be my maid. Now you want to harass me for the rest of my life. You exposed your shameless heart, and still want to harass me for the rest of my life. Shameless woman." Poochie. Tokisaki Kurumi almost vomited blood. She looked at Dustless with fire in her eyes. "If you don't kill me, when you fall into my hands in the future, I will make you beg for death. That's it." Although Tokisaki Kurumi's tone was harsh and aggressive, as if she wanted to swallow Dustless alive, the latter's reaction was calm. There wasn't even a trace of anger. "Tokisaki Kurumi, stop trying to be smart. Do you think I don't know your abilities?" Dustless's cold face raised a bit of mockery. He said sarcastically, "Carve Emperor's bullet of 8 can make his past reappear. Although the doppelganger doesn't have the strength of the main body, it has its own will and spiritual equipment. It can be stored indefinitely in the shadow, and can be summoned at any time before it is used up." This was also the reason why Tokisaki Kurumi could revive after being killed so many times. "Who told you all this?" Tokisaki Kurumi sucked in a breath of cold air, and looked at Dustless in a daze. She naturally wouldn't tell a stranger about her trump card, so where did Dustless learn about it? Even if it was nonsense, it was too much of a coincidence, and what he said was true. Who told me? In fact, it's very simple. Maybe I have the same ability as you. Maybe it's just a guess of our abilities. Wuchen shrugged perfunctorily. Of course, he wouldn't say that he had transmigrated. That's why I won't kill you. Even if I do, it's useless. You'll revive. Suddenly, Dustless rubbed his chin. The corners of his mouth curled up slightly, revealing a teasing smile. Since I can't kill you, I'll torture you. What are you trying to do? Tokisaki Kurumi's heart skipped a beat when she heard this. She knew that things weren't going well and subconsciously took a step back. I can't forgive someone who is hostile to me and dares to provoke me. Don't worry, I just want to give you a punishment that you'll never forget. Dustless walked over slowly. Every step he took, Tokisaki Kurumi would feel an inexplicable pressure. She couldn't help but feel irritated. Bam! Tokisaki Kurumi was stunned when she bumped into something behind her. This is Lai Chanhai's field. Where did the wall come from? The moment she turned her head, Tokisaki Kurumi was stunned. She suddenly realized that she and Dustless were trapped in a small transparent space. Is this a barrier? When was it set up? No wonder no one paid attention to our duel. Tokisaki Kurumi touched the invisible but real barrier in a daze. The hard touch made her feel a little dazed. To be able to set up a barrier without being noticed by Tokisaki Kurumi, was it because she was too engrossed in it? Or was Dustless just too mysterious? Could it be? She stared straight at Dustless. Tokisaki Kurumi stared straight at Dustless. Her eyes flickered nonstop. Girls tend to have wild imaginations. With such strength, could it be that she's the starter sprite? Dustless's strength was terrifying. He was definitely not an ordinary human, nor was he like AST's Tokichi Origami. He did not need to rely on equipment. Dustless relied on his own strength. Starter sprite? Although Tokisaki Kurumi's voice was soft, Dustless still heard it. What the hell is that? I'm not, and I don't know much about it. I'm not interested in knowing. All you need to know is that anyone who dares to be presumptuous in my territory must be punished. Your territory? Tokisaki Kurumi had a strange expression. She looked at the huge field. Could it be that Dustless's territory was Lai Chanhai? I'm talking about this planet, Dustless added after seeing the confused look on the girl's face. All right, Tokisaki Kurumi, accept your punishment. As soon as he finished speaking, Dustless blinked to Tokisaki Kurumi's side. His sudden action almost made Tokisaki Kurumi vomit blood. P.S. 3,000 fresh flowers plus updates, 3,000 rewards plus updates, 1,000 reviews plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates. Chapter 2095. Dustless skillfully lifted Tokisaki Kurumi's skirt, exposing her fair skin to Dustless. Bastard, put it down. Tokisaki Kurumi felt a chill on her buttocks. She yelled angrily and slapped Dustless out of reflex. You still want to resist? Seeing this, Wuchen smiled disdainfully and easily grabbed the attacking arm. Damn it! With her arm caught, Tokisaki Kurumi struggled with all her might and cursed. Damn you, you better kill me or else I'll. Or else what? Wuchen sneered when he heard that. The arm that was raised high fell down. Slap. A bright red palm print appeared on Tokisaki Kurumi's buttocks. This time, Wuchen didn't show any mercy at all. The clear red palm print occupied a quarter of the entire area of her perky buttocks. On her fair skin, the palm print was particularly conspicuous. You're already a captive and you still dare to be so arrogant. If I don't teach you a lesson, you'll really think that I'm the reincarnation of a merciful bodhisattva. Dustless looked into Tokisaki Kurumi's eyes and chuckled. How is it? How do you feel? Do you still want to resist? Why don't I do it again? As he spoke, Dustless raised his arm. Ouch. No. Tokisaki Kurumi gritted her teeth in pain. Tears welled up in her eyes. She purposely said in a coquettish tone, I'll obey you, okay? As long as you don't hit me, I'll do anything to you. Phew. Tokisaki Kurumi moved closer to Dustless's ear and blew a mouthful of hot air into Dustless's right ear. Don't doubt my words. A strong man like you is very likable. Dustless remained silent. He didn't respond, nor did he reject Tokisaki Kurumi's provocation. However, he didn't accept it either. Although you're a little strong, you're still just a lecher in the end. Seeing Dustless's silence, Tokisaki Kurumi's eyes glinted. She knew that she had a chance. Silence meant tacit consent. She stretched her waist and displayed her graceful body to Dustless. It had to be said that Toshiaki Kurumi was a true seductress. Her figure was great, and her appearance was impeccable. The places that were supposed to be protruding were not flat, and the places that were supposed to be protruding were also protruding. Especially Toshiaki Kurumi, who was different from the elves. She was extremely bold, and would not be restrained by worldly norms. She was a seductress that could make one's blood boil. Am I pretty? Blinking her crystalline pupils, Tokisaki Kurumi purposely used some sensitive parts of her body in an attempt to draw out the evil fire in his heart. However, Dustless only glanced at Tokisaki Kurumi. His casual reply almost made her vomit blood. Not bad. You have a nose and eyes. Dustless glanced at Tokisaki Kurumi and answered casually. Tokisaki Kurumi's mouth twitched. If she could, she would have bitten Dustless to death. What kind of reply was that? Who didn't have eyes and nose? He was obviously trying to brush her off. You still dare to pretend to be calm. Tokisaki Kurumi glared at Dustless and sneered inwardly. Don't think that you're not a lecherous bastard just because you're pretending to be calm. How about I dance for you? Tokisaki Kurumi said with a smile as she swayed her snake-like waist. Really? Dustless's bored eyes lit up. He nodded silently. Try to be quick. Tokisaki Kurumi snorted in her mind. She wanted to use this dance to confuse Dustless or find a chance to escape. After pulling away from Wuxia for a while, Tokisaki Kurumi lightly tapped on the grass with her feet. Soon after, her graceful body soared into the air like a dragonfly skimming the surface of the water. Her graceful body gently rotated, looking quite artistic. In terms of dancing, although Dustless was a layman, he was still a little dazed. What a lecherous bastard. Tokisaki Kurumi saw Dustless staring at her in a daze. She couldn't help but feel proud. Dustless was like a monk who didn't care about her. Now he was staring at her in a daze. It was obvious that it was all an act. Men are really lecherous bastards. Tokisaki Kurumi snorted and began to ponder. What kind of method should I use to escape? Should I use a direct method? Come here. A satisfied voice suddenly sounded. Tokisaki Kurumi snapped out of her thoughts. She turned to look at Dustless, who was looking at her with interest, and frowned. Is this guy trying to make me do it? Tokisaki Kurumi was nervous. If Dustless used force, she couldn't do anything. She couldn't use her ability and could only wait for death. Very good. Not bad. Dustless gave her a thumbs up and looked at Tokisaki Kurumi. How about this? How? Tokisaki Kurumi, who was close to Dustless, subconsciously took a step back. This guy was going to use force. You're good at gymnastics. I'll leave the task of teaching everyone radio gymnastics to you, Dustless said with satisfaction as he patted Tokisaki Kurumi's shoulder. Ha! Gymnastics? Tokisaki Kurumi looked at Dustless with a dumbfounded expression. That's ballet, not radio gymnastics. She yelled frantically. Dustless scratched his head awkwardly and said apologetically, so it's dancing. I thought you were performing radio gymnastics for me. I even wanted to ask you to be my PE class representative. Plop. Tokisaki Kurumi fainted from anger after hearing Dustless's answer. She was foaming at the mouth and regretting communicating with Dustless. P.S. 3,000 fresh flowers plus more chapters, 3,000 rewards plus more chapters, 1,000 comments plus more chapters, 500 automatic subscriptions plus more chapters. Chapter 2096. But there were some things that could not be easily resolved. Just like the current situation. How did Dustless take away his pendant? Chong Gongjun expressed that he did not feel anything at all. He did not even look at it. Looks like my training is not enough. Thinking of this, Chong Gongjun suffered a great blow. If Wu Chen had wanted to kill him just now, perhaps he would have become a corpse. It's just an elf. I'm not going to keep quiet after being humiliated like this. Chong Gongzhen gritted his teeth and looked at Dustless with hatred. Who is this? Out of curiosity, Dustless opened the accessory in his hand. What came into view was an old photo. The people in the photo were two young children. Both of them had blue hair. The two children were very young, probably only a few years old. Who allowed you to look at other people's belongings? Chong Gongzhen's face flashed with anger when he saw this. He tiptoed lightly and rushed forward. Slash. The sword light cut through Dustless's body. However, the feeling this time was different from before. Chong Gongzhen clearly felt that he had hit something hard and looked over subconsciously. How is this possible? How can a human know an elf's body be so hard? Chong Gongzhen's eyes widened and almost fell out. He looked over and saw that the person who blocked the beam saber was a Fairfinger. Her skin was as white as snow, and her skin was as smooth as a newborn baby's. It was this finger that looked like it could not withstand a single blow, as if it would break at any moment. However, at this moment it was extraordinarily sturdy, unbelievably blocking the tip of the beam saber. What's there to be surprised about? Dustless carefully examined the girl's shocked expression. He teased her softly and said, "Being too shocked only shows that you are narrow-minded. However, it's normal for you to be shocked. If I didn't have some means to shock you, how could I tame that stubborn little elf, Night Sword God Toka, with my fists?" Not everyone was like Itsuka Shido, who had countless beautiful girls throwing themselves at him when his protagonist aura was slightly activated. Dustless did not think that he had that kind of charisma. Of course, he didn't need it. In this world, only the fist was the absolute truth. For those who were not convinced, they could use their fists to make the other party make the right choice. Don't flatter yourself. Chong Gongzhen, who was extremely displeased, suddenly retreated in a flash when he heard this. He stopped when he was a dozen meters away from Dustless. Soon after, a piercing cold light shot out from his eyes. He forcefully stomped his feet on the ground and charged over at an even more terrifying speed. Just a mere sprite. The incomparably sharp laser blade slashed towards Dustless's head. You're calling me an elf again? Forget it, you can think whatever you want. Hearing this, Dustless only shook his head and smiled without saying anything. All along, he had been thought of as an elf, the incarnation of evil. However, Dustless didn't care about this and was too lazy to explain. In any case, in this long life of his, he was often misunderstood. Swish. Swish. A light blade that could cut through iron like mud descended from the sky, and it looked like it was about to crush Dustless's head. The scene seemed to have frozen, and time seemed to have stopped at this moment. At this moment, Dustless suddenly opened his arms, and a turbulent repulsive force erupted from his body. Chakra instantly erupted. Shinra Tensei. Bang. Chong Gongzhen's little face instantly turned pale, as if he had been slapped in the face. His body flew out in a sorry state. What kind of elf is this guy? At first, I thought he could manipulate light, but now it seems that it's not that simple. He can even manipulate an unimaginable force like repulsive force. Chong Gongzhen supported his trembling body and looked at Dustless warily. He muttered to himself cautiously. This is the first time I've seen a male elf. Are they all so powerful? Chong Gongzhen's little face kept changing. He stared at Dustless's calm expression, and felt an inexplicable pressure. He was sure that this annoying guy had not even used 1/10 of his strength. Otherwise, he wouldn't be so calm. Young lady, keep coming. Are you going to give up? Dustless curled his fingers and said with a smile. Your brother is a very strange person. Now, his sister is also different from the rest. It's rare. How about this? Seeing that you have an excellent constitution and delicate features, I think you'll have a better future if you join me. Dream on. I'm not so low as to join the elves. Chong Gongzhen snorted coldly and rejected Dustless's offer. Then he swooped down again. Like a moth to the flame. Seeing this, Dustless shook his head helplessly and narrowed his eyes slightly. The moment Chong Gongzhen was about to make contact with him, his right arm suddenly shot out like lightning. Bang! He grabbed Chong Gongzhen's neck skillfully, smashed him to the ground, and held him down tightly. Cough, cough, cough. With his throat grabbed, Chonggongjina coughed and struggled with all his might. He kicked Dustless with all his might and attacked his vital parts. Young lady, the game of house is over. Dustless smiled as he grabbed the young lady's throat easily. Also, I advise you not to resist me. If I use a little more force, your throat will be crushed in an instant. Bones mixed with blood. Do you want to see how beautiful they are? This sentence was like a sharp all-piercing into Chonggongjina's chest. His limbs, which were still resisting, calmed down. His dull eyes stared straight at Dustless. That's more like it. Dustless smiled and let go of his arm. The moment he let go of Chonggongjina's neck, something strange happened. Chapter 2097. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. A black shadow leaped into the air with a sharp blade in his hand. He aimed at Dustless's back with a ferocious expression, and stabbed down with all his might. Crack. Dustless's back was pierced through like a piece of paper by the mysterious person, leaving a huge hole. It's not over yet. Chonggyashina, who had freed herself from the struggle, revealed a ferocious expression. She held a beam saber in her hand and slashed down without hesitation. Puchi. The previous insult had obviously provoked Chonggyashina's anger. She slashed Dustless's head with her sword. Puchi. 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 As if she was still angry, Chonggyashina slashed down with her sword again. After slicing Dustless's body into 8 pieces, she stopped with satisfaction. Huff, huff, huff. Although it happened in a split second, Chonggyashina had slashed dozens of times. She was exhausted. Beads of sweat slowly dripped down her hair. Thank you, Tashiichi Origami. While wiping her sweat, Chonggyashina thanked Tashiichi Origami with a smile. She praised. So you were pretending to be unconscious all this time. You're really smart. It's not that I'm smart. Tashiichi Origami glanced at Chonggyashina and analyzed. In the end, this guy was too careless. He thought he was invincible. He underestimated us. And Tashiichi Origami seemed to have recalled something. Her eyes were rolling. I heard your conversation just now. Your brother is Itsuka Shido? I forgot to tell you. I'm his girlfriend. If you don't mind, you can call me sister-in-law. Sister-in-law. Chonggyashina's eyes suddenly shrunk. She was stunned. Yes. As if she was narrating something very ordinary. Tashiichi Origami's tone was calm. He's liked me for many years. I've liked him for many years too. Many years. Chonggyashina broke out in cold sweat. How many years was many years? Itsuka Shido was around 17 years old this year. Buzz, buzz, buzz. Suddenly, an unusual dazzling light flashed in the dark enclosed space. The huge flash was as dazzling as the sun. The two girls instinctively closed their eyes. This light. Could it be that the guy has revived again? Chonggongjin's tone carried a trace of unconcealable shock. Just as he was about to step forward to find out what was going on, he suddenly felt a chill on his back, as if he had been targeted by the god of death. What a heartless girl who likes to bite the hand that feeds her. I didn't kill you just now, but you cut me into 8 pieces. I must teach you a lesson. The moment he finished speaking, Chonggongjina was shocked to find that he was being picked up. Let me go. Don't touch me with your dirty hands, or I'll chop you up. Chonggongjin blushed and turned his head to glare at Dustless. To his grief and indignation, he found that he was like a pet that was simply picked up by Dustless. No matter how hard he struggled, he could not escape from the devil's grasp. You want to chop me up? You deserve a beating. Dustless raised his arm and stared at the girl's fair legs. They were flawless, as beautiful and clean as snow. However, this was not Dustless's target. What kind of crappy equipment is this? Are you trying to go against me? Staring at the girls, but Dustless frowned. Chonggongjina's but was covered by the AST member's equipment. There was no place for him to attack. He wants to hit my butt. Fortunately, I have the equipment to block it for me, or else this stinky hooligan would have succeeded. Seeing Dustless frowning, Chonggongjina, who had been defeated, showed a rare hint of joy. She suddenly felt that this heavy equipment was too fitting. You should give up. Kill me if you have the guts. Chonggongjina's eyes regained some color. and her tone sounded rather arrogant. I'm a very kind person. If you want to give up, then I'll give up. Besides, you're so cute, I can't bear to kill you. Dustless smiled mysteriously. Then you should just let us go. I promise that I won't trouble you in the future. Chongongjina purposely acted coquettishly, her small face showing a very cute curve. TSK, I can spare your life, but punishment is necessary. The mysterious smile on Dustless's face turned into a teasing one. What are you trying to do? Chongongjina felt numb after being stared at by Dustless's sneaky eyes. She felt a sense of fear that she had never felt before. That pair of bright eyes was terrifying, as if they were going to swallow her alive. Don't worry, it's nothing difficult. I just want to explore your body. Dustless smiled casually. Explore my body? Chongongjina suddenly panicked and shouted. Don't you mess around. Let me tell you, I'm sick there. And I'm having my period. Sick there. Upon hearing that, Dustless was stunned for a moment. Looking at the terrified face of the young girl, he pondered for a while, and his eyes flashed with understanding. He sneered and said, Little brat, although you're not bad looking and will be a beauty in the future, you think too highly of yourself. You're not worthy of having sex with me. You. Chongongjina was enraged by Dustless's words. Her face turned red as she said, Didn't you say that you wanted to explore my body? Yes. Dustless nodded and said lazily, I said that because there's something wrong with your body. Someone has done something to it. You can only live for about 10 years at most. If I don't save you, you'll definitely die. And now, you're delusional enough to think that I'll marry a little girl like you. Even if you're narcissistic, there's a limit to it. You're not worthy of me. Uft. Upon hearing that, Chongongjina was so enraged by Dustless that she started foaming at the mouth. In the end, she rolled her eyes and fainted like Tokisaki Kurumi. Those words were too hurtful. P.S. 3,000 fresh flowers plus more chapters, 3,000 rewards plus more chapters, 1,000 comments plus more chapters, 500 automatic subscriptions plus more chapters. Chapter 2098. The temperament of young people these days is really bad. They can't even take a little blow. Really useless. Dustless shook his head in disappointment. He lowered his head and looked at the young girl who was foaming at the mouth. He could only sigh in boredom. She really couldn't take the blow. What about you? Dustless turned his head and looked at Koichi Origami with a smile. There was a hint of teasing on his face. What do you want to do? Koichi Origami looked at Dustless cautiously. She was frightened by his stare, and her body couldn't help but tremble slightly. Even though Koichi Origami hid it very well, Dustless's fiery golden eyes saw it clearly. No flaw could escape his eyes. What do you plan to do to me? I'll say it in advance. I already have a maid to choose. As for you, kill me if you want. I'm not interested in other things, especially servants. Koichi Origami interrupted Dustless impolitely, and turned her head away in an extremely arrogant manner. Become my servant? When did I let you say you want to be my servant? Glancing at Koichi Origami indifferently, Dustless bluntly said, You want to be my servant? I'm the one who despises you. You. Hearing this, Koichi Origami's mouth twitched. She almost couldn't help but pounce on Dustless and bite him to death. This guy's words were really too infuriating. You what? What kind of person do you think can never be my follower? Dustless looked at Koichi Origami with disdain and impolitely commented, It's your good fortune that I have my eyes on you. You should thank the heavens. It must be a blessing from the heavens. If it's really a blessing, why didn't you disappear? Koichi Origami looked at Dustless, unwilling to admit defeat. TSK, what a vicious woman. You actually prayed for me to disappear. Dustless looked at Koichi Origami with disdain. After staring at her for a while, he shook his head and said, No, you're too far away. What do you mean? Yuichi Origami frowned and asked. Originally, she disdained to pay attention to Dustless, but this guy always made a surprising move. If things went wrong, she would suffer a big loss, causing Yuichi Origami to suffer. I said you're not fit to be my servant. Dustless shook his head and looked carefully at the origami before saying, You're too scheming. If I put you by my side, you might threaten others. Origami looked at Dustless expressionlessly, but her heart was secretly happy. She couldn't wait for Dustless to kick her out. However, since you're my captive, I've decided. Dustless looked at Yuichi Origami playfully and suddenly announced, I don't need you to be my maid. I already have Shixiang and Shirshio. I have enough maids. How about this? I still need someone to help me wash my feet. Why don't you do it? Plop. Kite One Origami's eyes rolled back, and he staggered and almost fell down. Don't go too far. Origami was fuming with anger. She rarely got angry and her mental state was unstable, but at this moment, she was really infuriated by Wu Chen's words. Who do you think I am? You actually want me to help you wash your feet? This is simply bullying. Kite One Origami picked up the beam saber, but this time, she didn't attack Dustless. Instead, she put it on her own throat. Are you planning to commit suicide? Dustless looked at Kite One Origami in surprise and couldn't help but ask himself. I actually forced you to commit suicide. Am I that bad? Kite One Origami didn't speak. She just looked at Dustless coldly. Finally, she closed her eyes in despair, and the beam saber slashed at her own neck unceremoniously. If you die, I will castrate Itsuka Shido. This sentence seemed to contain supreme magic. The beam saber that was about to break her neck stopped beside her neck, and there were some bloodstains. Are you really that despicable? Kite One Origami stared at Dustless with deep pain. This guy's strength was 100 points, but his despicable methods were 1,000 points. You can continue to commit suicide. Shrugging, Dustless said very casually, and then walked away lazily. I promise I will castrate Itsuka Shido. You. Kite One Origami gritted her teeth, but she was helpless. Itsuka Shido was her most precious person. Kite One Origami didn't want him to be implicated. Clang. In desperation, Kite One Origami surrendered, threw the beam saber on the ground, and looked at Dustless with a dispirited face. I promise to help you wash your feet every day. You can't hurt Itsuka Shido. No, now I changed my mind. Suddenly turning his head to look at Kite One Origami, Dustless solemnly announced, Bathing me is too much for you. I'm really sorry. I didn't understand that you are still an unmarried girl. I'm sorry. Dustless suddenly apologized very seriously and looked down at Kite One Origami. Did this guy change his personality? Kite One Origami, who was caught off guard, was stunned. She looked at Dustless as if she saw a ghost. She saw that his eyes were very open and sincere, and it didn't look like he was lying. So, I don't need you to wash my feet. Dustless continued. This is not suitable for a girl like you. It's too tiring. A girl in puberty should not be overworked. I am your physical education teacher. It is my duty to take care of your health. Thank you, teacher, for taking care of me. Yuani Origami bowed solemnly. Just as she was about to open her mouth to express her gratitude, Wu Chen's sudden words hit her hard. So you will be responsible for my bathing tasks in the future, such as soaking in hot springs and so on. We can have some contact. Anyway, I am your physical education teacher. If you want to train your body, for example, your chest is too small, I can help you. Compared to girls like Toka, your body must be very inferior. So in order to let you live a healthy and lively life, I have decided to sacrifice myself. Wu Chen looked at Yue Origami, who was dumbfounded, with a look of I'm thinking for you. P.S. 3,000 flowers plus updates, 3,000 rewards plus updates, 1,000 comments plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates. Chapter 2099. Tokichi Origami stared at Dustless blankly. She couldn't figure out why there was such a shameless person in the world. And he was a PE teacher. God was blind. Was this kind of scum suitable to be a teacher? Don't show such an incredible look, Origami, do you think I'm wrong? Dustless's clear eyes were dim and full of innocent grievances. I'm doing this for your sake. Pucci. The moment this sentence came out of his mouth, Tokichi Origami was so angry that she spat out her saliva. She stared at Dustless and couldn't help but be indignant. You're taking advantage of me, and you're shamelessly saying that you're doing this for my sake? Tokichi Origami was really hit by Dustless's shamelessness. It was the first time she saw such a shameless person. Do you dare to refuse? Dustless asked with a smile. You. Tokichi Origami's pretty face suddenly became angry. Why don't I dare to refuse you? Then I'm going to castrate Itsuka Shido now. Dustless turned his head and said. His words made Tokichi Origami speechless. She had to take back the words that were about to come out of her mouth. I'm willing to obey your arrangement. Resisting the discomfort in her heart, Tokichi Origami could only agree to Dustless's overbearing treaty. Dustless was going to castrate Itsuka Shido. Tokichi Origami really didn't have the courage to gamble with Dustless. Even if she knew that he might just be joking, Tokichi Origami couldn't risk Itsuka Shido's life. Ding ding ding. The bell of the last class finally spread out under the expectation of countless people. After school, the students rushed to go home. Ling-in, you go back temporarily. I have something to do at noon today. In the sports room, Dustless said to Murasame Ling-in. He had to go to the base of AST to help the 4 departments get back the 4 kainai. He had no time to go home with Murasame Ling-in at noon. I understand. Murasame Rain nodded. If it was Yedao Juxiang and others, she might be worried, but in terms of the strength of Dustless, it was the other party who should be worried. Dong dong. At this moment, a dull knock on the door suddenly sounded, and the closed door was suddenly pushed open. That's strange. Shouldn't the students be going home now? Dustless frowned and shifted his gaze over. A rather unexpected figure came into view. Origami Kite? Dustless frowned as he looked at the young girl in surprise. Are you planning to humiliate yourself again? Little girl, you should give up. I really don't mean to hurt you, but with your current level, if you want to, take it. Who would have thought that Origami Kitsune would throw a doll to Dustless, and then leave without saying a word? This is... Looking at the doll in his hand, Dustless was quite surprised and said to himself, isn't this the doll of the 4 series, the Sinai? She actually took the initiative to hand over the thing. This kind of thing has never happened before. Is there any conspiracy? Murasame Rain, who was more cautious, asked with full of vigilance. Was it possible to spit out what you ate? AST was not a good person. They also counted on this doll to ambush the 4 series. How could they easily hand it over? Maybe it was like this before. Dustless was not much surprised and said very seriously. But they realized the gap between me and them, so they admitted defeat and gave up their previous plan. Compared with me, all the strong are weak. Dustless finally added. These words sounded arrogant and boundless, but Murasame Rain was silent. Who let this be the truth? Let's go back. Originally, he wanted to go to AST's base to make trouble, but he didn't expect that group of girls would be so smart at the moment. They even took the initiative to send the doll of the 4 series. It seemed that they were afraid of Dustless. Inside Itsuka Shido's house. Knock knock knock. There was a burst of knocking on the door. Itsuka Kotori came in wearing slippers in a very bad mood. And she didn't forget to complain. Those 2 guys really know how to enjoy themselves. There are only 2 elves and me at home. What if they go berserk? Although the probability was 0, at this moment, Toka was wolfing down the food. And as for the 4 series, they were sitting on the sofa watching TV very obediently. They looked quite harmonious. You 2 guys came back so late, did you go on a date? After opening the door, seeing Murasame Rain and Dustless together, Itsuka Kotori said in a bad mood. It's very dangerous to leave me alone at home to watch the 2 elves. Dangerous? Dustless ignored Itsuka Kotori's complaints and walked in lazily. The dangerous one is you, Itsuka-san. I'm afraid that you and Toka will steal her children's meal. Bastard. Hearing this, Itsuka Kotori was furious and looked at Dustless indignantly. That was originally mine, and you gave it to Toka without my permission in order to please her. You can't say that. Dustless walked behind Toka and gently rubbed her hair. He slowly raised his head and looked at Itsuka Kotori's beautiful eyes and said with a smile, isn't saving the elves your duty as a commander? What's the big deal about losing a children's meal? I. Dustless's words made Itsuka Kotori speechless. Indeed, as Dustless said, her duty was to save the elves, and a children's meal was nothing, even if Toka was already past the age of eating children's meals. P.S. 3,000 fresh flowers plus more chapters, 3,000 rewards plus more chapters, 1,000 comments plus more chapters, 500 automatic subscriptions plus more chapters. Chapter 2100. Dustless completely ignored the girl's anger. He didn't even look at Itsuka Kotori. She had two modes. One was the terrifying commander mode, and the other was the sister mode. Itsuka Kotori's two modes were completely different. Itsuka Kotori was acting like a tsundere, and it didn't make sense. You're a good girl. That's rare, but it's good that you're like this. Dustless patted the girl's head with a warm smile. Okay. When Nightblade God 10 Fragrance heard this, she immediately rubbed her forehead against Wu Chen's palm. A bright smile appeared on her small face. Wu Chen subconsciously pinched her cheek. It was extremely harmonious. Despicable fellow, he actually used my things to curry favor with 10 fragrances. Simply despicable. Itsuka Kotori stomped her feet in anger. She realized that Dustless had used her deluxe children's meal to win Toka's favor, and it had reached a terrifying 90%. Perhaps he was just one step away from completely subduing Nightblade God 10 Fragrances, and even sharing a bed with her would not be a problem. Immature brat. Dustless glanced at Itsuka Kotori. She was in commander mode. She was both tsundere and sharp-tongued, so it was useless to say anything. Knock knock knock. Someone knocked on the door. Itsuka Kotori frowned and glared at Dustless. Then she slowly opened the door. Her eyes were clearly saying, just wait and see. Creak. After opening the door, Itsuka Kotori's pupils constricted at the sight of the person in front of her. Shido. It was Itsuka Shido, who was expelled from the Itsuka family. That kid is here? Does he have a death wish? Dustless's eyes glowed coldly. There was a 3-point agreement. Dustless could move into the Itsuka family, but he had to expel Itsuka Shido. Now that he dared to come back, it was an indirect violation of the agreement. Thinking of this, Wu Chen's eyes were filled with murderous intent, and he pounced forward like a blade. This brat is... Who exactly beat him up like this? What a pity. Why didn't you kill him? Dustless's murderous intent disappeared when he saw Itsuka Shido covered in blood and wounds. He was already half dead, so he might as well kill him. After all, he would suffer if he lived. Who did this? Itsuka Kotori's face darkened as she clenched her fists. It was the newcomer Tokisaki-san. I don't know why she attacked me. Shido was out of breath. His eyes were about to close. He was only one step away from death. Tokisaki-san? Dustless frowned. He looked at Shido and said, that fellow can attack anyone but you. In a way, you're too important to her. Although Dustless obtained the same ability as Itoka Shido was too easy to bully. Tokisaki Kurumi would never kill him. After all, he was an important chess piece and couldn't be lost. Don't tell me you. The hatred in Itsuka Kotori's eyes disappeared as she said angrily, you're lucky that you didn't get killed for harassing an elf. Especially that Shikisaki Kurumi you mentioned. Her codename is Nightmare, and the number of humans who died in her hands is more than 5 digits. In conclusion, Itsuka Shido was lucky to be alive. I didn't molest her. Itsuka Shido said helplessly. Tokisaki-san once said that she was an elf. I tried to save her today, but she hunted me down as soon as I touched her. Luckily, I was fast enough. Otherwise, I would have been dismembered. Itsuka Shido felt wronged. He only wanted to save Tokisaki-san. Idiot. Do you really think you are fast? Can you be faster than an elf? Dustless curled his lips in disdain. Save. That was the word Tokisaki-san hated the most. Perhaps if it wasn't for Tokisaki-san's uniqueness, he would have been killed already. She just didn't want to kill you. You are of great value to Tokisaki-san. Dustless explained. Shido was only able to escape because Tokisaki-san purposely went easy on him. Otherwise, she could have easily killed him. You are still alive. The heavens must be helping you. Dustless looked at Itsuka Kotori and said, "If you don't want this guy to die, send him to the hospital. Serves him right." Dustless shook his head and sighed. He should be satisfied that Tokisaki-san didn't take the initiative to find trouble with him. But now, this guy actually dared to provoke Tokisaki-san. Especially after Tokisaki-san was taught a lesson by Dustless, Tokisaki-san was already furious and depressed. Itsuka Shido was simply courting death by trying to strike up a conversation with Tokisaki-san. In Dustless's eyes, Itsuka Shido was simply courting death. Moreover, it was an extremely foolish way to die. "Shido, you should go to the hospital for now. I will make that guy pay for all the harm you have suffered." Itsuka Kotori's eyes were cold, and everyone could feel an ominous hatred from her. It was clear that she wasn't joking. Itsuka Kotori respected Itsuka Shido the most. Her favorability towards him had always been 100%. Now that Itsuka Shido was injured and had a hole in his abdomen, Kotori was obviously angered. Although Tokisaki-san was an elf and was powerful, Tokisaki-san was also an elf. She wasn't afraid of Tokisaki-san. P.S. 3,000 fresh flowers plus more chapters, 3,000 rewards plus more chapters, 1,000 comments plus more chapters, 500 automatic subscriptions plus more chapters. Chapter 2101. That's bad. Compared with Wuchun, who was gloating, Murasame Rain was particularly anxious. Her small hands subconsciously clenched tightly, and her eyes staring at Itsuka Kotori were full of caution. "I hope there will be no big problem." Murasame Rain prayed secretly. She sincerely hoped that there would be no violent scene. Shido's significance to Kotori was extraordinary, and it was not as simple as a simple brother. Kotori's favorability to Shido had always been 100%. Now that Shido was attacked and almost lost his life, Kotori would inevitably be furious and turn into an elf. However, as the saying goes, good things don't come true, but bad things come true. Sometimes, the more one hoped not to happen, the faster it came. Boom boom boom. On Kotori's skin, there was a burst of energy fluctuation visible to the naked eye, showing a fiery red color, like a blazing flame. Terrifying and scorching. "Damned incubus, I won't let you go so easily." Itsuka Kotori clenched her fists and swore. This terrifying flame ripple, with Kotori's anger, and even the range gradually increased, and it was about to burn Murasame Rain. Oh no! Seeing the heat wave rushing toward her, Murasame Rain turned around and ran, but it was too late. She had been secretly contacting Ratatosker to ask about the data of Kotori's emotions, but at this time, Kotori suddenly exploded. "Am I going to die?" Turning her head and looking at the energy flame, Murasame Rain smiled bitterly. The sofa touched by the flame was burned into nothingness in an instant. She was afraid that she was not much better. Even if she didn't die, her life was over. Buzz buzz buzz. However, at this time, in the darkest period of Murasame Rain's life, a fierce gravitational force suddenly came, tightly circling around Murasame Rain, so that she couldn't move, and then flew out in an instant. Wanxiang Tianyu. The majestic gravitational force covered Murasame Rain, and in front of the powerful gravitational force, she had no power to resist and fell into a warm embrace. "It's you." Turning her head, she saw Dustless looking at her gratefully. Murasame Rain's eyes were full of sincere gratitude. "You were too careless." Faintly glancing at Murasame Rain, Dustless said softly, "Although some data is important, it is not worth mentioning compared with life, understand?" Hearing this, Murasame Rain's cheeks froze and she nodded embarrassedly. "Sorry, I was careless just now." The commander's psychic wave broke out in a straight line. "If it is not handled well, it will lead to a disaster." This was not that Murasame Ling Indo was worried, but every elf was so dangerous, at least for humans, they could easily take away the lives of hundreds of thousands of people. "There is one more thing." His sight fell on Murasame Rain's cheek. Dustless looked at her seriously. "Is there anything else?" Murasame Rain heard the words, and her sight was also cast over. She looked at Dustless with some curiosity. Although this guy was very indifferent, the questions he raised often hit the nail on the head. "Can you move away from me now?" Dustless said abruptly. At this moment, Murasame Rain was completely lying on his body, and she was quite uncomfortable. Murasame Rain's mouth twitched a few times, and then she realized that she was almost lying in Dustless's arms, and the posture was extremely ambiguous. Sorry, I have been thinking about the commander, so, in short, I am sorry, I will pay attention to this kind of thing in the future. Murasame Rain's face was red and hot, and she was extremely embarrassed to leave Dustless's body. It's okay, Dustless said indifferently, and he didn't care about anything. Well, there is something I want to discuss with your excellency. Looking at Dustless nervously, unconsciously, Murasame Rain also used a kind of honorific when talking to Dustless. This slight change was not even noticed by Murasame Rain herself. Say it. Dustless was just a simple word. This bastard always uses short words every time he speaks. Does he really think he has a golden mouth? Murasame Rain's eyes twitched a few times, and she looked at Dustless with a bit of resentment. I want to bother you with one thing. Taking a deep breath, Murasame Rain said seriously, one day in the future, if the commander goes berserk and can't suppress the power in his body, I hope you can help him. According to the analysis of the data I got from Ratatosker, your body data is exactly the same as the little boy's, and you are likely to have exactly the same data, so please, be sure to help at the critical moment. The meaning of Murasame Rain's words was very simple. If Itsuka Kotori went berserk, Dustless must go on a date with her. He must win her favor, and it was better to seal the power of Itsuka Kotori. No problem. Without blinking his eyes, Dustless was unexpectedly easy to talk to. Are you? Murasame Rain looked at Dustless with her eyes stunned. Murasame Rain didn't expect Dustless to agree so quickly and easily. That Dustless Kuin. Pursing her dry lips, Murasame Ling-in was moved. When she was about to thank him, Wuchan's sudden words made her head roar. She staggered and couldn't stabilize her body. She fell to the ground with a plop. Don't worry, I promised to beat Itsuka Kotori, and beat her to submission. Staring at Itsuka Kotori, Dustless's eyes glowed with bright light, and finally added, what date? It's better to die, just like the Night Sword God Toka, force her to be obedient by force. Really, thanks to this little girl who went berserk, I found a rare good toy, don't let me down. P.S. 3,000 flowers plus updates, 3,000 rewards plus updates, 1,000 comments plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates. Chapter 2102. Beat. After hearing Dustless's words, Murasame Rain's head was ringing, and her whole person was petrified, staring at Dustless who was beaming with joy. If someone else said that he wanted to beat Kotori, Murasame Rain would definitely laugh at him for overestimating himself, but if it was Dustless, she couldn't help but worry about Kotori. What if her commander was crippled by this cruel brat? You don't have to thank me. Seeing Murasame Rain's eyes staring at him, Dustless slowly said, don't worry, I have enough strength. Now let's deal with this arrogant girl first. Dustless's eyes jumped with unknown brilliance, and his whole sight was cast on Kotori's head. And his eyes were also twisted in an instant. The blood-red pentagonal Mangekyo Sharingan radiated a strange light. What eyes are these? Murasame Rain's heart trembled, and her whole body was cold. Dustless's strange eyes made her feel an unprecedented depression. Don't mess around. Seeing that Wuchan was staring at Itsuka Kotori, Murasame Rain reminded him submissively, but she regretted it as soon as her voice fell. If I want to mess around, you have already been destroyed. Glancing at Murasame Rain lightly, Dustless's tone was like ice, as cold as it could be. Gulp. Murasame Rain choked, looking at Dustless's blood-red eyes. She sincerely felt that she was fragile and small, and being stared at by those unknown eyes, her secrets couldn't be hidden. Rain, report all the information of Nightmare to me. Kotori's tone was heavier, and her gorgeous eyes were dotted with visible flames. I'm afraid this won't work. A simple sentence suddenly sounded, questioning Itsuka Kotori's decision. The atmosphere seemed to have frozen, and even breathing became difficult for some reason. Looking up, the person who spoke was Dustless. Murasame Rain's heart jumped to her throat. At this time, this guy still wants to fight with the commander. Isn't he looking for death? Itsuka Shido's injury indirectly touched Itsuka Kotori's bottom line. This usually arrogant commander was already on the verge of exploding. It was too late to extinguish her anger, but Dustless threw a match and completely ignited the powder keg that was about to explode. If this wasn't adding fuel to the fire, then what was? What did you say? I dare you to repeat it again. Kotori suddenly turned back and looked at Dustless without blinking, a dangerous light brewed in her eyes. My business, you are not qualified to interfere, shut your mouth. When a person loses control of their emotions, they would become irritable. No one was an exception, including Itsuka Kotori. You are right, your business, I am not qualified to interfere. Dustless smiled slightly, then immediately mocked. But my mouth is on my body, this is my business, let me ask you, are you qualified to interfere? Boom boom. Not long after these words, the hidden psychic wave in Kotori's body was like a raging flood, exploding uncontrollably. Boom boom. The dark red psychic wave was more terrifying than the materialized flames, instantly annihilating everything that came in contact with it, such as the sofa and the chair, almost evaporated in the blink of an eye. Kakaka. The spiritual waves crashed against the walls, and the entire house began to shake. The fire attribute of the spiritual waves burned the walls into a charred black color. It was a terrible sight to behold, and suffocating black smoke rose everywhere. If Dustless didn't set up a barrier to prevent outsiders from spying on the situation in Kotori's house, someone would have probably called the police. This is none of your business, don't interfere. Even if you are an elf, I will still beat you up. Kotori gritted her teeth, and her powerful tone showed that she was really angry. Don't think too highly of yourself, I am not interested in your business. Dustless said casually. Didn't I say before, Kotori's house was expropriated, and now it is my house. You dare to set fire in my house. You are quite brave. If it wasn't for the fact that we know each other, little girl, you would have been cut into pieces by now. This guy Sai, can't he be a little gentlemanly? Commander won't die if he gives in. Seeing Dustless and Kotori going against each other, Murasame Rain didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Dustless's reaction was obviously that he wanted Kotori to challenge him, and he even deliberately angered Kotori. You forced me to do this. Hearing this, Kotori was furious, and her whole body suddenly emitted a bright luster, and the whole person seemed to be in a huge light cocoon, and turned into a huge light cluster, emitting a holy light. Oh no, that's Commander's spiritual equipment. Murasame Rain's eyes widened, and she looked at Dustless with some complaints. I want you to use the most peaceful way to calm the Commander's fire, but your behavior is playing with your life. It's peaceful enough, she is still breathing. Dustless said indifferently. If you know my past, you should feel relieved now. You. Murasame Rain almost vomited blood because of Dustless's words. Dustless's words were full of contempt for the elves, and he didn't even care about them at all, as if he had slaughtered a large number of elves in the past. Boom. A powerful impact burst out, and the energy cocoon on Kotori's body also disappeared. At this moment, the girl's posture was completely different from before, and a pair of cold eyes stared at Dustless. Itsuka Kotori was wearing a light pink dress. When the wind blew, the edges of her dress fluttered, revealing a pair of perfect white legs. It was as if the heavens had used all their strength to carve them. There was not a single flaw to be found. Due to the girl's explosive power, it was like a storm. The long dress was blown up high. Wu Chen's sharp eyes could even see fat too. The girl's breasts were half exposed, and there was a piece of silk tied around her waist. She was holding a dangerous weapon, and her eyes were full of murderous intent. Clap, clap, clap. Under such a solemn environment, Dustless actually clapped his hands. Moreover, he even gave a thumbs up vigorously, praising him greatly. There are horns on her head? Staring at the transparent horns on both sides of Kotori's forehead, Dustless's words made Kotori furious, and even Murasame Rain was afraid to stay away from Dustless. Little girl, are you the reincarnation of the Bull Demon King? Chapter 2103. Boom. Boom. Waves of heat spread out from Itsuka Kotori's body. The scorching light was like a storm, and the heat wave swept through the entire barrier space. Due to the high temperature, the sky within the barrier had turned into a fiery red color, and a terrifying amount of heat filled the air. The little girl is so young, but her outburst is quite terrifying. Her strength is barely not bad. Wuxia nodded secretly. The power of this elf really could not be underestimated. Back off now, and I can pretend that nothing happened. Itsuka Kotori was quite arrogant. She looked around the barrier and frowned. Wait for me to get angry, and the consequences won't be something you can bear. Dustless didn't say anything, but his face was very strange. Being threatened by a beautiful girl, this feeling was very strange. Idiot, don't anger the commander. Murasame Rain quickly got close to Dustless and said nervously, if you continue to be arrogant, you will only make the commander angry. At that time, the battle between the two elves may destroy this city. The life and death of others has nothing to do with me. Dustless looked at Murasame Rain and said coldly, if she doesn't get angry, how can I continue to play? Brat, if you can make me retreat, no, if you can make me retreat one step, then you win. Not only will I let you go, but I will also help you catch Tokisaki Kurumi. How about it? Pay for your stupidity. Itsuka Kotori couldn't take it anymore and charged forward, thrusting out her divine weapon. Itsuka Kotori originally wanted Wuxia to make a detour, so that she wouldn't get in the way of Tokisaki Kurumi. However, who would have thought that this brat would be so arrogant? It was obvious that he was trying to provoke her. Whoosh! The sharp sound of breaking through the air came head-on. Even if the rushing edge hadn't approached Dustless yet, his skin was inevitably stung. Such a violent little girl, and an elf, it will be hard for her to get married. Dustless faintly smiled and sighed. None of your business. Hearing that, Itsuka Kotori's mouth twitched a few times, and she increased the amount of spiritual waves in her body, and the chilling light on her axe became even more obvious. Buzz buzz buzz. Dustless did not show any weakness. His right hand trembled slightly, and like a black hole, it engulfed a large number of photons in the vacuum. Then, a shining divine sword was instantly compressed and formed. What a unique weapon! Staring at the photon sword in Dustless's hand, Murasame Rain's eyes lit up. She quickly picked up a notebook and hurriedly wrote something. It seemed that she was recording Dustless's data. What's the use of that? I can shatter it with a light stab. Itsuka Kotori chuckled in disdain and unleashed her full power. Clang clang clang. Sparks flew everywhere as the two weapons clashed. The immense force caused Itsuka Kotori's face to pale, and she was forced back a few steps as her arms trembled uncontrollably. Why is the force so strong? She stared at Dustless with her eyes wide open. Itsuka Kotori's mind went blank. This was the first time in her life that she made a mistake. Her hands were numb from the shock, and the blue veins on her wrists were clearly visible. That's it. Dustless said in a contemptuous tone. Weak little girl, it's hard for me to get serious. Humph. Hearing that, Itsuka Kotori snorted coldly, and her body trembled slightly, and then a dazzling light appeared. Buzz buzz buzz, the fiery heat wave exploded again. Different from before, this time all the spiritual waves rushed into the axe. The surface of the axe suddenly lit up, and the fiery red light was filled with a dangerous halo of destruction. Itsuka Kotori's spiritual waves poured into the axe, and the two sides of the axe became more and more dazzling. There were even flames coming out of the axe. Dustless looked at Itsuka Kotori quietly. She was like a fire fairy, and she could control the fire element at will. Boom boom boom. The axe had reached a state of energy saturation, and a huge beam of light shot out and rushed toward Dustless. The huge sound made people's eardrums hurt. Dustless looked up and aimed at the beam of light with his right hand, and a golden energy ball appeared at the tip of his thumb. Buzz buzz buzz. He increased the spiritual pressure in his body, and the energy ball gradually became bigger until it was the size of a fist. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. As if thinking of something, Dustless frowned and turned the energy in his body. The energy ball shrunk again, and most of the energy was recovered. Finally, Dustless's gaze froze, and he casually looked at the incoming beam of light. He flicked his finger and rushed over. Boom boom boom. The two opposing forces collided, and the void exploded, and a terrifying shockwave spread in all directions. Ka ka ka. The transparent barrier clearly couldn't withstand this powerful force, and after being attacked by the remaining energy, it was covered in cracks. Bang. The transparent barrier couldn't withstand wave after wave of energy attacks, and it shattered like a mirror. Fortunately, the barrier withstood 95% of the energy attacks, and when the barrier shattered, the shocking energy waves disappeared with the wind. The only thing worth mentioning was that Itsuka Kotori's house was razed to the ground. Seriously, even though the power of Void Flash was weakened, it still caused a huge commotion in the end. Dustless shook his head, indicating that he had already weakened the power of Void Flash, but it still caused a huge commotion. You bastard, I won't let you go so easily, never. On the other side, Itsuka Kotori's angry voice sounded. She bared her teeth, and looked like she wanted to bite Dustless to death. Ah! Dustless looked over and saw Itsuka Kotori's sorry state, and he couldn't help but laugh. P.S. 3,000 flowers plus updates, 3,000 gifts plus updates, 1,000 comments plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates. Chapter 2104. Looking at her, Itsuka Kotori, who was arrogant a moment ago, was now embarrassed. There was a layer of dirt on her face was black, and even her clothes were burnt. Her skin was exposed to the air, and when the wind blew, some parts of her body were exposed. Ouch! Itsuka Kotori screamed, her face flushed red. She glared at Dustless and scolded. Bastard, I won't let you off so easily. You better cut your stomach to atone for your sins. Cut my belly? Sorry, I'm a person who is very afraid of pain, and due to some special reasons, I have an immortal body. Dustless shrugged and said perfunctorily. Wait for me, I'll cut you into pieces. Itsuka Kotori said fiercely. Then continue. Dustless hooked his finger and provoked. Is this all you're an angel? You're no different from a vulnerable human. You. Itsuka Kotori gritted her teeth in anger, but she couldn't say anything. Recalling the previous battle experience, she was really vulnerable to Dustless. Commander, put on your clothes first. Murasame Rain rolled her eyes at Wuxia and quickly handed her coat to Itsuka Kotori. Only then could the girl's exposed body be covered. Do you have any gentlemanly demeanor? How dare you hit such a beautiful girl like me? Itsuka Kotori put on her clothes while cursing Dustless. People like you should go to hell. That's good. Murasame Rain looked at Itsuka Kotori calmly. Dustless suddenly scolded Itsuka Kotori. She was like a deflated balloon, and her anger disappeared. Fix the house, I want to sleep. Hearing that, Dustless just glanced at the two as if nothing happened, and then leisurely turned around and left. I'm going to buy a cup of Coke. Under the sunlight, Dustless's figure gradually elongated, and soon disappeared from their sight. This guy is too despicable. Itsuka Kotori was so angry that she stomped her feet. Looking at the ruins of Itsuka Kotori's house, she wanted to cry but had no tears. She cursed, Dustless, this be***starred, raised my house to the ground and asked me to rebuild it. How can he be in the mood to drink Coke? He doesn't even have the slightest remorse. Repent? Murasame Ling-in listened to the cold sweat and couldn't help but complain. Didn't you hear what he said? He tried his best to suppress his strength just now. In front of the vending machine on the other side, Dustless had just inserted a coin when a can of Coke fell out. That violent girl seems pretty strong. After opening the can of cola, Dustless casually found a place to sit down and muttered to himself. The elf's abilities are not bad. That starter elf should be more fun. It's really fun. At this moment, a seductive voice sounded. The tone was very seductive and moving. It was like taking drugs, and people couldn't help but look over. It's you. Dustless glanced at the girl who slowly walked over and said lightly, Are you here to challenge me? Did you forget the lesson from last time so quickly? The uninvited girl was Tokisaki Kurumi. Hey, you can't say that. I think we can walk together. Tokisaki Kurumi sat beside Dustless and chuckled. At least for now, it seems like we have the same goal. I'm not interested in children's fights. Dustless didn't even look at Tokisaki Kurumi as he casually said, "You elves are just in existence to relieve boredom in my eyes. As for the goal, it's just your wishful thinking." He didn't want elves, so what goal did he have? Cold and arrogant as always. Tokisaki Kurumi wasn't angry. Instead, she moved closer to Dustless's ear and whispered a long string of words. "We can work together to find the starter elf. Then you or I can kill her." Tokisaki Kurumi's eyes flickered with a dangerous light. Her tone was sinister and didn't seem like she was speaking casually. "You want to use me?" Dustless frowned at Tokisaki Kurumi as he coldly said, "Help you kill the starter elf, and your dream will be fulfilled. The other elves will also disappear." Tokisaki Kurumi's expression froze. She looked at Dustless in surprise and said strangely, "Don't all humans want elves to disappear? Don't compare me to those mortals." Dustless continued to leisurely drink his cola and said, "They're just elves. I've seen all kinds of monsters. Do you think elves are special? In my eyes, they're just ordinary people with superpowers. If the elves were monsters and heretics, then Dustless could be called the Great Demon King. After all, he was the Ten-Tails. The elves were nothing compared to him." "You." Tokisaki Kurumi stared at Dustless in astonishment. She didn't know why, but she felt a warm current in her heart. She carefully looked at Dustless's handsome and serious face. His magnanimous tone didn't seem like he was lying, nor was there a need to. "You're not that annoying." Tokisaki Kurumi looked at Dustless seriously for the first time. For the first time, she felt that the man in front of her wasn't that annoying. Elves had always been the enemy of the world. This was the first time she was recognized by an outsider. It was a strange feeling, but she didn't hate it. However, Dustless's next sentence made Tokisaki Kurumi fly into a rage. "But you're annoying. You're like a shadow that won't go away. You're not allowed to follow me anymore. P.S. 3,000 flowers plus updates, 3,000 rewards plus updates, 1,000 reviews plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates." Chapter 2105. Tokisaki Kurumi was so angry that she felt dizzy. She pointed at Dustless with a trembling finger. This bastard didn't know how many people were fawning over her every day, but this bastard showed a look of disdain. Especially when he looked like he had eaten a fly, it made Tokisaki Kurumi want to vomit blood. "Remember this clearly, goodbye." After throwing the kin into the trash can, Wuxia turned around and walked away. Only Tokisaki Kurumi was left on the bench with her eyes wide open. Tokisaki Kurumi stared at Dustless's back. She couldn't help but feel a little stuffy. She subconsciously touched her face and her curvy figure and muttered to herself, "Am I so unattractive that this bastard isn't interested in me at all?" Tokisaki Kurumi looked at Dustless unwillingly. She gritted her teeth and chased after him. "Oh, I remember you asked me to be your maid last time, right?" Tokisaki Kurumi stopped in front of Dustless and bowed elegantly to Dustless. "Yes, I did." Dustless looked down at Tokisaki Kurumi, who was a head shorter than him, and laughed. "Are you going to change your mind now?" "Change my mind?" Tokisaki Kurumi laughed and didn't say anything. She treated it as a joke that went in one ear and out the other. "Why don't I tease you a little so you don't have to be so cocky?" Tokisaki Kurumi rolled her eyes and a cunning look flashed in her eyes. "You want me to be your maid? Although the request is unreasonable, it's not impossible." Tokisaki Kurumi looked at Dustless with a smile. No one knew what she was thinking. Dustless didn't move. He looked at Tokisaki Kurumi silently, as if waiting for her to say something. "Actually, the request is very simple. All you need to do is to pay a small price," Tokisaki Kurumi said with a hidden meaning. "Price?" Dustless looked at Tokisaki Kurumi with interest and didn't refuse. "Tell me about it." "As long as you," giving Dustless a playful look, Tokisaki Kurumi laughed. "As long as you wash my feet 10 times, I'll agree to your conditions." In all fairness, Tokisaki Kurumi's conditions weren't harsh. On the contrary, they were ordinary, and there wasn't any unreasonable request. The reason why he asked Dustless to wash his feet was because he felt that Dustless was too arrogant and needed to be suppressed. This condition is very easy to fulfill. It's very simple, and even very considerate. Anyone can easily fulfill it. Dustless spoke softly, without any ripples in his tone. Shouldn't you be happy? Tokisaki Kurumi was speechless. This guy was as clueless as a rock. So do you agree or not? As soon as he finished speaking, Tokisaki Kurumi stared at Wuchen without blinking. She was quite confident in her looks. Tokisaki Kurumi's face was filled with smiles. From her point of view, Wuchen should have immediately agreed to her request. To be able to obtain such a beautiful maid, he should be so happy that he couldn't even find his bearings. Let me think. Dustless didn't say much. He only replied with 3 words, then lowered his head to think about something. Bastard. I gave you such a generous condition, and you still dare to think about it. Tokisaki Kurumi almost went crazy. Dustless's hesitant expression was clearly saying that she was at a disadvantage. Even if she gave him an inch, he should know when to stop. After thinking about it for a long time, I finally understood. After a long while, Dustless finally took a deep breath. He looked at Tokisaki Kurumi seriously with a faint smile on his face. He seemed to be very satisfied with his idea. At least you know what's good for you. Tokisaki Kurumi breathed a sigh of relief. To be honest, she didn't choose to be Dustless's maid on a whim. She had thought it through carefully. Tokisaki Kurumi's goal was to kill the first elf. However, it was too difficult for her to do it alone. After witnessing Dustless's terrifying strength, she knew that if she and Dustless worked together, the first elf would die without a doubt. Secondly, she had suffered a lot in front of Dustless. She still wanted to take revenge on Dustless, but it was impossible in terms of strength. After all, she had witnessed how terrifying and heaven-defying Dustless was. Therefore, she could only take action in other ways. Letting Dustless wash her feet was a way to make up for her broken pride. I suddenly changed my mind. Previously, you only needed to agree to my conditions. Now the conditions have changed. Dustless suddenly said. Changed? Tokisaki Kurumi was stunned. Of course it has changed. You have to wash my feet 10 times before I agree to be your maid. It's the kind of job that lasts a lifetime. I'll do anything you want me to do. As she spoke, Tokisaki Kurumi even licked her lips seductively. You misunderstood me. Lightly glancing at Shirasaki Kurumi, Wuchen slowly said. In the past you only needed to agree to be my maid, but now? Now what? Tokisaki Kurumi's mouth twitched a few times as she looked at Dustless's naughty smile. She felt a deep sense of unease. You have to call me daddy 100 times before I agree. Dustless rolled his eyes and said seriously. You bastard. Tokisaki Kurumi's face was filled with rage. A vintage gun appeared in her hand. Bang, bang, bang. Without even thinking, a series of dense bullets were fired out. Poochie, poochie. A few huge holes appeared in Dustless's head in the blink of an eye. Even his eyes were pierced. But in the next second, they were repaired by the glint fruit. This bastard, I must kill him. I'm so angry. Tokisaki Kurumi's lungs were about to explode. Helping a beauty wash her feet 10 times could make her a maid for a lifetime. This was a free lunch that fell from the sky. But Dustless, this bastard, not only did he not agree, he even wanted her to call him daddy 100 times before agreeing to be his maid. Could he be any more despicable? P.S. 3,000 flowers plus updates, 3,000 rewards plus updates, 1,000 reviews plus updates, 500 auto subscriptions plus updates. Chapter 2106. You. Don't push your luck. After wasting half a day, Tokisaki Kurumi finally managed to squeeze out such a sentence. Her watery eyes glared at Dustless. The anger in her eyes could be clearly seen, but she sounded a little timid. She couldn't win in a fight or a verbal battle, so she naturally lacked confidence. I'm pushing my luck. What can you do about it? Dustless retorted indifferently and coldly said. It's your fortune that I've taken a fancy to you. Since you don't know what's good for you, I won't play with you anymore. Goodbye. As his voice faded, Dustless leisurely turned around and left. Despicable guy. I won't let you off so easily. Focusing on Dustless's back, Tokisaki Kurumi stomped her feet in anger and pouted her lips. She was fuming with anger because of Dustless. Her thoughts and memories flowed back like the tide. Thinking back, Tokisaki Kurumi realized that she had never suffered such a huge loss since her debut. Only when she met Dustless did she feel as if she had swallowed a fly. What an overconfident little girl. She actually dared to ask me to wash her feet. She's quite ambitious. Along the way, Dustless seemed to be taking a leisurely stroll as he walked very slowly. Since Itsuka's house had been destroyed, he would definitely have no place to stay when he returned. Boom, boom, boom. A deafening explosion tore through the sky as a violent shockwave blew towards him. Dustless's hair was blown to one side. The relatively cool atmosphere suddenly became a lot hotter. Dustless squinted his eyes and carefully sensed it. This scorching energy seems to belong to Itsuka Kotori. Who's fighting with her again? Dustless was dumbfounded. He was really puzzled. He was sure that this was Itsuka Kotori's energy. He had just fought with her, so he was quite familiar with this energy fluctuation. Interesting. How long has it been? She just fought with me, and now she's changed opponents. This arrogant girl really can't be looked at with ordinary eyes. Out of curiosity, Dustless sped towards the center. Boom, boom, boom. The closer they got, the clearer the ear-piercing rumbling sounds became. Looking up, they saw two figures fighting in the sky, engaging in a life-and-death battle. Balrog, I must kill you today and avenge my parents. The silver-haired girl glared at Itsuka Kotori. When she mentioned her parents, her eyes were filled with coldness. Swish, swish, swish. The equipment that the white-haired girl was wearing provided her with great power. She quickly flew towards Itsuka Kotori with the laser sword in her hand raised high. That's ridiculous. Itsuka Kotori furrowed her brows and flew out without showing any signs of weakness. If we continue fighting like this, it's only a matter of time before something happens. Murasame Rain was secretly anxious, looking at the two people who were fighting fiercely. She sincerely felt that something was wrong. I sensed that one of them was Itsuka Kotori. I thought it was another elf, but it turned out to be this little girl. Dustless walked slowly, looking at the two women fighting in the sky, and smiled. It turned out to be Tabichi Origami. The person who was shouting for revenge was one of the members of AST, Tabichi Origami. It was estimated that the previous fight between Dustless and Itsuka Kotori attracted her. After all, it was too noisy. Seeing Dustless coming, Murasame Rain's eyes lit up and said anxiously, "The task of ending this battle is handed to you. If it continues, the commander may completely go berserk." "It's none of my business." Dustless responded very rudely and said coldly, "What, you treat me as a full-time babysitter? Where the fire is, I will go there to put out the fire. There is a reward." Cursing Dustless thousands of times in her heart, Murasame Rain could only take a step back helplessly. "Not interested, I'm not a greedy person, and you don't have anything worthy of me." Without looking at Murasame Rain, Dustless answered calmly, "You." Murasame Rain felt a headache and could only say in a pleading tone, "Every time the commander transforms into an elf, she can't completely control this power and lose her mind. You don't want her to become a killing machine. Of course, you can ignore the life and death of others, but you don't want the commander to destroy this city, no, your planet, right?" Dustless was slightly stunned, silently stared at Murasame Rain for a long time and rarely praised. "This reason is very good and it really moved me. Doing things on my territory without my permission is ignoring my authority. This man's temper is really weird." Murasame Rain didn't know whether to laugh or cry. For Dustless, this kind of strange and unpredictable person, he didn't play according to common sense every time. But fortunately, since Dustless agreed to make a move, it indicated that this battle had already ended here. "Go to hell." Itsuka Kotori gradually became angry and suddenly waved the huge axe. Boom. It seemed to be a casual blow, but compared with before, the power was several times stronger, and Tabichi Origami was blown away without any effort. The power is so strong. Tabichi Origami kept retreating. Her face changed greatly, and she barely stabilized her body after retreating for more than 10 meters. She held the laser sword with trembling hands, and her arms couldn't help shaking. This casual blow almost broke the will of Tabichi Origami. If it was other AST members, they may have been directly shocked to death by the powerful force. The game ends here. Itsuka Kotori's eyes were full of raging killing intent, filled with the breath of death. Even if it was a hot summer, being stared at by the horrible red eyes, Tabichi Origami was numb, and her back was cold. Boom. The shape of the giant axe held by Itsuka Kotori suddenly changed, and the huge axe on both sides shrank, and became a strange shape similar to an iron pillar. With the increase of the spiritual power output of Itsuka Kotori, the iron pillar glowed with dangerous dark red light, surrounded by high-density golden flames and burned red. Go to hell. Pointing the weapon coldly at the dazed Tabichi Origami, the thick flame erupted in a beam. The speed was extremely fast, there was no time to dodge, and Tabichi Origami was about to be melted. P.S. 3,000 flowers plus updates, 3,000 rewards plus updates, 1,000 evaluation votes plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates. Chapter 2107. Go to hell. He pointed his weapon at the dazed Toichi Origami, and a thick flame erupted in the form of a light beam. It was so fast that Toichi Origami didn't even have time to dodge. Am I going to die here? I can't accept this. I didn't even get to avenge my parents. Origami Kitsune bitterly smiled, looking very bleak. Looking at the huge ray of light coming towards her, her delicate little face was covered with a layer of beautiful despair. She couldn't avenge her parents, but she was still killed by the enemy. In desperation, Kitaichi Origami calmly closed her eyes and waited for her death. Buzz. It was also at this moment that an inexplicable throbbing came from the horizon. The void in front of Kitaichi Origami suddenly rippled like the surface of the water. What's going on? Itsuka Kotori opened her eyes wide, and her red eyes were full of shock. At this moment she who was in her elf form seemed to have returned to consciousness. Kakaka, accompanied by a violent sound, a huge black hole appeared in the space in front of Koichi Origami. What is this? A hole? Tokichi Origami, who had her eyes closed, suddenly opened her eyes and stared at the black hole in front of her. Her small face was filled with shock. Is this to save me? Could it be Sure Dao? Thinking of this, Toichi Origami's heart was full of sweetness. The only person in this world who really cares about her is Shido. This is not a hole, it's my ninjutsu Kamui. And I'm not Shido, I'm sorry if I disappoint you. An extremely discordant voice came. Yuani Origami suddenly stopped, and looked towards the source of the voice. Dustless stepped on the air, and came over with a calm face. Shido is not here, the person you hate the most, I'm here. Dustless pointed to his nose and introduced with a smile. Pucci. At the same time, the black hole that had exploded was like an endless black hole. It swallowed the incoming light beam in an instant. It was no different from a stone falling into the sea. There was no further movement. That's it. Seeing this, Itsuka Kotori stared at Dustless angrily and said, Don't be nosy, this is between me and her. I don't want to be nosy. Dustless looked at Itsuka Kotori and said slowly, But I said before this planet is my territory, did I allow you to fight? You. These words not only angered Itsuka Kotori, but Toichi Origami also frowned. This is too arrogant. However, recalling that it was Wuchen who saved her, Yuani took back the words that were about to come out of her mouth. You what? If you don't agree or want to change my rules, then come at me. Looking at Itsuka Kotori's face, Wuchen's tone was filled with disdain. Itsuka Kotori is too weak. Boom boom boom. Itsuka Kotori was clearly angered by Dustless's words. The golden flames around her lit up again, and they were even stronger than before. It was as if they were going to burn through the sky. Her body kept spitting out flames, and she was surrounded by a golden fireball. Gulp! Even Kitsune Origami felt a chill run down her spine. and her eyes were filled with fear. Humph! Seeing this, Dustless snorted coldly, his black pupils were swallowed by the red Sharingan, and the three Tomo eyes slowly rotated. Sleep for a while. Dustless glanced at Itsuka Kotori's body. Then he didn't look at her anymore. Don't look down on people. Losing once doesn't mean you will lose twice. Seeing that Dustless ignored her, Itsuka Kotori snorted and rushed toward him. Be careful, she's coming. It was rare for Origami Kitsune to remind Dustless. Her eyes were full of fear. After this battle, she had already understood the huge gap between ordinary humans and elves. Plop! However, before Itsuka Kotori could fly for long, her eyes suddenly rolled back, and she fell to the ground under the gaze of Toichi Origami. What did you do to me? Itsuka Kotori looked at Dustless with difficulty, and she tried to stand up again, but to her surprise, the energy in her body was drained by some mysterious force, and she could only glare at Dustless. Despicable! Fight me if you have the guts. Itsuka Kotori was so angry that she gritted her teeth, and she cursed Dustless for using such a despicable method to win. That's it. Toichi Origami's mouth twitched. Such a powerful elf was knocked out by Dustless with a single glance, and he didn't even do anything. This was too ridiculous. She was like an extra in a movie, and as long as the plot was right, she could be killed at any time. You want to fight me with just you? Dustless looked at Itsuka Kotori with pity and sighed. You can't even block my illusion, and it's the simplest kind, and you want to fight me? Kotori, there's a limit to your overestimation, or you will become a laughingstock. Elves were powerful, but they weren't a threat to Dustless at all. They were in two completely different realms. No matter how strong a child was, they could only be beaten up by airplanes and cannons. P.S. 3,000 flowers plus updates, 3,000 tips plus updates, 1,000 comments plus updates, 500 auto subscriptions plus updates. Chapter 2108. So powerful, he killed the elf in an instant. Tabichi Origami's eyes were as bright as the stars. Even though she was a simple-minded person, she was looking at Dustless with admiration. He had only taken a casual glance at the fairy, and Itsuka Kotori found it extremely difficult to even stand up. Who else could do such a thing? Balrog, today is the day you die. Calming herself down, Tabichi Origami glared at Itsuka Kotori with hatred. She held a laser sword in her hand, and walked over with a cold expression. The killing intent on her face was no joke. After all, because of Itsuka Kotori, her parents were burned to death. Their faces were unrecognizable, and not even their corpses were left behind. It was understandable that Tabichi Origami hated Itsuka Kotori. No one would be able to tolerate such a thing. In fact, if Dustless encountered the same fate as Origami Kite, he would have already chopped his enemies into pieces and ground their bones into ashes. I killed your parents. Hearing this, Itsuka Kotori also stared blankly at Tabichi Origami, who was glaring at her with hatred. Clearly, she wasn't faking it. Even though Itsuka Kotori's memories of the past were blurry, she knew that she had done something terrible 5 years ago. She just couldn't recall it. Die. Swish. Swish. Recalling the tragic state of her parents, she swung the blade mercilessly at Kotori's head. Her head was about to be sliced open. 10,000 mammoth heavenly attraction. At this critical moment, there was a sudden suction force from behind. The majestic force forcefully pulled Toichi Origami away, and even his blade was sucked over. Plop! Being caught off guard, Yuichi Origami fell into Dustless's arms. Her body suddenly trembled, and a strange electric current flashed through her body. Her body suddenly became soft, and she didn't even have the strength to take revenge. Yuichi Origami, who had never had intimate contact with the opposite sex, suddenly blushed. She was quite cute, and the speed of her breathing became several times faster. It smells so good. I remember his name is Dustless. Is he really a man? Looking up at Dustless, Yuini Origami was also stunned for a while. It was the first time she met a man with such a fragrance. Brat, have you seen enough? Dustless glanced at her coldly. His simple words made Origami Kitsune shiver. Her small face was extremely embarrassed, and she quickly began to struggle. Why don't you let me go? Slow idiot, said Zhongxian. Dustless just snorted in disdain. I didn't hug you at all. You threw yourself into my arms. You. Hearing this, Yuichi Origami's little face became even more embarrassed. She glanced at Dustless in annoyance and then flew backward, withdrawing from Dustless's arms as fast as she could. Why did you stop me from taking revenge? Yuichi Origami Kitsune looked at Dustless with anger brewing in her eyes. She pointed at its Tsuka coterie and shouted angrily. She killed my parents. Dustless didn't say anything. In fact, he didn't refute. The death of parents was a blood feud, and no one could tolerate such a thing. But the premise was that Yuichi Origami's parents must be at Tsuka coterie. But the truth was not so. As a transmigrator, Dustless knew the truth of the past. Your parents. Carefully looking at Yuichi Origami Kitsune's face, Dustless remembered the truth of the past. He shook his head and said slowly. Coterie didn't kill them. I still remember the scene of the past. It's useless even if you want to clear her name now. Yuichi Origami Kitsune moved her lips and looked at Dustless expressionlessly. Seeing this, Dustless frowned slightly. Actually, the real murderer is. Just as he was about to say the real murderer, Dustless suddenly closed his mouth and told the truth. The blow to Yuichi Origami Kitsune was too cruel. She probably couldn't accept such a cruel blow. In fact, the real murderer of Yuichi Origami Kitsune's parents wasn't at Tsuka coterie, but Yuichi Origami Kitsune herself. But this kind of thing couldn't be explained clearly. It was too shocking for Yuichi Origami Kitsune, and she might even have a mental breakdown. Besides, Dustless didn't have any evidence that could convince Yuichi Origami Kitsune. It doesn't matter if you believe it or not. This is the undeniable truth, and I have no reason to lie to you. Dustless said calmly. Then he changed the topic and said with a smile. Besides, who told you that your parents are dead? You're going off topic. It's no different from talking nonsense. Yuichi Origami Kitsune glared at Dustless. Her good impression of him disappeared instantly. This guy is getting better at talking nonsense. How could she remember this kind of thing wrongly? The scene of her parents being burned to death was still vivid in her mind. This unlucky child. Dustless couldn't help but sigh. Finally, he bowed his head and thought for a while. In short, you should go back. Your parents will go back safe and sound tonight. But, speaking of this, Dustless's tone became a lot lower. He said in a deep voice. Although your parents didn't die, they were attacked, and some of their memories faded a lot. Dustless decided to use Ghetto Reincarnation Heavenly Jutsu to resurrect Yuichi Origami Kitsune's parents. Anyway, they wouldn't be affected. Dustless's data was better than Uzumaki Nagato's. Take Obito Uchiha for example. She didn't die even after using Ghetto Reincarnation Heavenly Jutsu, let alone Dustless. After that, he would use Dojutsu to erase the memories of Origami Kitsune's parents. As a result, this matter will inevitably come to an end. It may not be satisfactory, but it is the best ending. Are you serious? Yuichi Origami looked suspiciously at Dustless. He didn't look like he was lying at all. Of course. Dustless nodded and smiled mysteriously. When the time comes, don't be scared. In fact, they have been secretly living in this world, silently observing you. P.S. 3,000 flowers plus more, 3,000 rewards plus more, 1,000 comments plus more, 500 automatic subscriptions plus more. Chapter 2109. Are you kidding me? Toichi Origami glared at Wuchen. This fellow was full of nonsense. Her parents had been burned alive by Itsuka coterie many years ago. How could they be resurrected? You don't have to lie to save me. Even though I've temporarily lost my memories, I do remember clearly that I've done something wrong in the past. Itsuka coterie said in a daze. That's the truth. Wuchen looked at Tashiichi Origami and said, I won't accuse people and I won't lie to a kid. Listen to me, go back now, your parents will come home tonight. Do you think you are a god? You can bring people back from the dead? Tabichi Origami was still skeptical. Dustless could reverse time and bring people back from the dead, but that was something only a god could do. Dustless laughed twice and joked. In my long life, I have done too many professions. I have been a ninja, a pirate, a celestial dragon, and a shinigami. In short, I have many professions. If you want me to become a god, I don't mind playing this new profession. You are crazy. Tabichi Origami frowned and looked at Dustless. She saw that he was smiling and was very confident. She thought to herself, with Dustless here, I can't kill the Balrog. Tabichi Origami could see that Dustless and Itsuka Kotori's relationship wasn't simple. It was impossible for him to watch her kill people without doing anything. Okay, I will believe you this time. Taking a deep breath, Tabichi Origami stared at Itsuka Kotori. Even if she was dissatisfied, she held it in and said, Dustless, I can give you one night. But if you can't bring my parents home, I will still kill this woman. If you can't complete the task, you will have to give me her life. You still want to bargain with me? Dustless touched his chin and looked at the stubborn Tabichi Origami with interest. He waved his hand and said, Fine, I will agree to your conditions. However, Itsuka Kotori's life is her own. I have no right to decide. Then isn't this a loss for me? This kind of agreement has no advantages or benefits for me. Yuichi Origami coldly snorted. Wasn't this just trying to gain something without risking anything? You little girl. Wu Chen sighed. Sure enough, the ignorant were fearless. After living for a few hundred years, he had encountered various kinds of ambitious and ruthless people who dared to bargain with him. How about this? If I can't complete the task, I will give you my life. Looking at Yuichi Origami seriously, Wu Chen smiled and said seriously. His tone was magnanimous and natural, as if he was talking about something trivial. Are you crazy? Itsuka Kotori and Tabichi Origami exclaimed at the same time. Both of them widened their eyes and looked at Dustless in disbelief. This guy was gambling with his life. Especially Yuan-e Origami, it seemed especially absurd. Her parents were clearly dead, and she had seen it with her own eyes. Yet, Wu Chen still insisted that Yuan-e Origami's parents should go home tonight. If they didn't come back, they would rather be killed. Wasn't this retarded? Dustless. Compared to Tabichi Origami, Itsuka Kotori was extremely touched. Tears began to well up in her eyes, and her pink eyes were also dotted with tears. For her, Dustless was willing to give up his life and Tabichi Origami's life, which really touched Itsuka Kotori. This guy. On the other side, Murasame Rain, who was usually in a trance and looked very weak, looked at Dustless in a daze, and the sound of excitement could be heard through the mini headphones in her ears. Commander's favorability to Dustless reached 100% in an instant. It was only about 20% to 30% before, but this time it soared to 100%. It's a miracle. Hearing the report in the headphones, Murasame Rain was quite calm. If it was her favorability to Dustless would also rise to this level. This was completely a date with his life, not an act. Itsuka Kotori was touched by Dustless, and it was normal for her favorability to reach 100%. Not everyone had the courage to gamble with their own life for the lives of others. I hope you don't regret it. Tabichi Origami took a deep look at Dustless, and after a few seconds of silence, she looked at Itsuka Kotori and turned away. Her eyes were quite complicated. There was hatred, jealousy, and envy. Are you serious? Seeing Tabichi Origami left, Itsuka Kotori stood up and walked to Dustless, and hurriedly asked, I didn't ask you to gamble with your own life, and this bet is really. Itsuka Kotori opened her mouth but found it hard to speak. This matter had nothing to do with Wu Chen, but he was willing to bet his own life. If he lost, he would definitely die. Itsuka Kotori was extremely touched by Wu Chen's actions, no matter if he was hot-headed or thinking twice before acting. Of course I'm serious. Dustless stretched his body lazily, yawned lazily and smiled. I may die in the future, but at least at this moment, I haven't lived enough, and I don't plan to die for the time being. You can really let Tabichi Origami's parents go home at night? Itsuka Kotori bit her lower lip and looked at Dustless nervously. If they couldn't go back, Dustless would lose his life. Didn't I tell you? I won't gamble with my life, and I don't want to die for the time being. Since I promised, I can do it. Staring into Itsuka Kotori's eyes, Wu Chen's eyes shone like the moon in the sky. Kotori fell into a daze. I'll leave for a while. Dustless turned around and left. It seemed like he was going to revive Tabichi Origami's parents. P.S. 3,000 flowers plus updates, 3,000 rewards plus updates, 1,000 reviews plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates. Chapter 2110. Looking at Dustless's back, both Rain Murasame and Kotori had a complicated feeling, and they both stared at Dustless in a daze. As for Itsuka Kotori, her heart was filled with warmth and gratitude. She was surprised that Wu Chen was willing to gamble with his life. She was even caught off guard, and her favorability towards Wu Chen rose to a shocking 100%. As for Murasame Rain, she was full of admiration. Being able to make Itsuka Kotori's favorability rise to 100% in an instant, Murasame Rain really admired Dustless. Commander, what's our next plan? After stabilizing her emotions, Rain Murasame looked at Kotori. The next plan. Kotori pondered for a while. Itsuka Kotori thought for a moment. She had regained her rationality after Wu Chen's antics. She said wisely, "Protect Wu Chen for now. Don't let him get hurt." Although Shido was injured before, Kotori wasn't worried. It wasn't that Kotori underestimated Shido's life, but because Shido sealed Kotori's ability a long time ago, so he got Kotori's recovery ability as an elf, so he wouldn't be in any danger. On the other hand, Kotori was afraid that Dustless wouldn't be able to complete the mission. If he took the initiative to die, everything would be over. This kind of primitive exchange wasn't worth it. After all, this matter had nothing to do with Dustless. Time flew by, and it was evening in the blink of an eye. At this moment, in Tabichi Origami's home, the silver-haired girl was sitting on the sofa, looking at the TV with dull eyes. She was like a lifeless statue. How dare he gamble? Is he not afraid of death? Tabichi Origami repeated this sentence for almost the entire afternoon. She couldn't figure out where Dustless got his confidence from, and he even dared to gamble with his life. After all, the scene of her parents being burned alive was still vivid in her mind. Even now, when she recalled it, her chest would hurt. However, Dustless said that her parents were still alive, and would let them go home at night. This was complete nonsense. Let's see what kind of ridiculous excuse this guy will use to get away with it. Yuichi Origami turned off the TV. When she was about to take a shower, the sound of knocking on the door suddenly attracted her. Dustless? Tokichi Origami frowned, and then went to open the door in slippers. Creak. As expected, what entered his eyes was indeed Wu Chen, who was grinning from ear to ear. Where is he? Where are my parents? Yuichi Origami poked her head out and looked around. She found that there was no one around. Not to mention her parents. There was not even a stray cat. Not yet. Shrugging, Dustless calmly stepped into Tokichi Origami's house. He casually looked around, not minding that this was a girl's house at all. You are really not polite at all. Turning her head and glancing at Dustless, who was wandering around, Tokichi Origami's mouth twitched twice. After immediately closing the door, she asked very impolitely, "Where are my parents? You said you would bring them over tonight. Haven't you noticed yet? They are already here." Dustless suddenly smiled mysteriously. They are here? Tokichi Origami looked at Dustless suspiciously, and immediately looked around with expectation. There was no one in the big room. It was as quiet as a dead hell. Are you playing with me? Tokichi Origami asked angrily. However, in the next second, a sudden change occurred. Tokichi Origami, who originally planned to find Dustless to settle the score, suddenly looked at the miraculous scene in front of her. Impossible. How can you do this kind of thing? Tokichi Origami asked in disbelief. Even because of excessive shock, her voice was a bit sharp. A ripple appeared in the space, and two holes appeared. Then, two young bodies slowly floated out of them. Father and mother. Wiping her eyes, Tokichi Origami suddenly saw her parents, whom she had not seen for many years. Her nose was sour, and she almost couldn't help but cry. Looking at the two intact people, Tokichi Origami stared at the mysterious monster in front of her in horror. A few years ago, Tokichi Origami's parents were burned alive by flames. Their bodies were not even left behind. When they were found, they had already become unrecognizable black charcoal. Dustless now used a heaven-defying method to restore the two of them. Their appearance was clearly distinguishable. Touching their bodies, there was still a cold temperature and delicate skin unique to humans. Tokichi Origami thought that they were plastic people. What method did you use to restore my parents' bodies? Tokichi Origami asked curiously. In fact, the moment she saw the two bodies, her heart was already full of gratitude to Dustless. Her parents, who were burned to black charcoal, were perfectly restored by Dustless, as if they were asleep. In fact, at this moment, Tokichi Origami's dislike of Dustless in the past disappeared. P.S. 3,000 flowers plus more chapters, 3,000 rewards plus more chapters, 1,000 comments plus more chapters, 500 automatic subscriptions plus more chapters. Chapter 2111. Staring at the shocked girl, Dustless's reaction was flat, and he explained as if talking to himself. It's very simple, as Jubi. My vitality is extremely huge. I just used my cells as the basis to reconstruct your parents' bodies. That's all, it's very simple. Very simple? Tabichi Origami stared at Dustless in a daze for a long time. Then she asked in a shocked voice. Are you an alien? Can this kind of thing be done by humans? Tabichi Origami was speechless, and she didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Especially when she looked at Dustless's relaxed face. She was even more shocked and numb. Such a heaven-defying method was like a magic trick or a game for Dustless. Didn't I say before, I occasionally play the role of a god. It's normal to be able to do this kind of thing. Dustless shrugged his shoulders and immediately glanced at Tabichi Origami and waved his hand. I'm going to resurrect them now, please stay away. Dustless has already done something to the bodies. Even if they are resurrected now, Origami's parents won't remember the memory of being killed by Tabichi Origami. Gulp. When she heard Dustless say the word resurrect, Tabichi Origami's heart was in her throat, and she couldn't help but sob up and down. She looked at Dustless in horror and asked excitedly, Can you really do that kind of thing? Of course I can do it. I often use that technique, it's just a small matter. Dustless nodded affirmatively, and immediately smiled. What's more, if I can't do it, I will have to pay with my life. I told you before, I haven't lived enough, it's too early to die now. Tabichi Origami didn't comment, and immediately took 2 steps back. Dustless didn't waste time seeing this. His right eye instantly turned into reincarnation Sharingan, and he made a hand sign and shouted. Outer path a reincarnation. Kakaka. The void suddenly exploded, and then a large mass of green light pierced through the dark crack and landed on Tokichi Origami's parents. The green light was like specks of starlight, but also like liquid water. The moment it entered the 2 corpses, some redness appeared on their originally pale faces, and their fingers also began to move gently. Thank you, Dustless. Where are you? Uni Origami, who was about to thank Dustless, helplessly found that Dustless had disappeared from her sight. We've finally dealt with this big problem. Under the dim illumination of the street lamps, Dustless strolled alone on the path at night. He stretched his waist lazily with a tired look on his face. Although performing Samsara of Heaven didn't affect him much, Dustless felt a little tired. It seems that you're very tired. A soft voice suddenly entered Dustless's ears, and his body suddenly froze. He subconsciously looked over, and a cute and delicate girl appeared in front of him. Tokisaki Kurumi? Why are you here again? Dustless frowned and said coldly. This is the 3rd time Tokisaki Kurumi came to find him. I came to find you with good intentions, but you showed a disgusted and disappointed expression. Do you dislike me that much? Tokisaki Kurumi looked at Dustless with resentment, and there was a trace of jealousy in her words. You weren't like this when you were with Tokichi Origami. Is the gap between us that big? You went to see Origami? Dustless narrowed his eyes, and a murderous intent flashed in his eyes. This Tokisaki Kurumi is a famous homicidal maniac. Yes, not only did I see her, but I also witnessed the process of you reviving her parents. Really, I thought you were just bluffing, but I didn't expect you to be able to do such a thing. Tokisaki Kurumi looked at Dustless with admiration. Her expression was exaggerated, as if she had discovered a new continent, and her words were full of admiration. Reviving people from the dead, not even humans or elves had such a powerful ability. Cut the crap, tell me your purpose. Dustless waved his hand, and looked at Tokisaki Kurumi with an impatient expression. When this person came to find him, it was always an impending disaster, and nothing good ever came out of it. Dustless even labeled Tokisaki Kurumi as a jinx in his heart. I heard that your ability is the same as Itsuka Shido. How about this, let's combine? After a moment of silence, Tokisaki Kurumi became more and more satisfied, and finally gave an answer that made Dustless furious. P.S. 3,000 flowers plus updates, 3,000 rewards plus updates, 1,000 reviews plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates. Chapter 21:12. Do you think we can combine just because you say so? Who do you think you are? You want to combine with me? Dustless's eyes flickered as the corner of his mouth curled up. He seemed to be tempted by Tokisaki Kurumi's suggestion. There's a chance. Seeing Dustless's interest, Tokisaki Kurumi licked her lips and exhaled deeply. Her eyes lit up as she stared at Dustless. Ever since she witnessed Dustless's strength, Tokisaki Kurumi's desire to possess Dustless grew. At the same time, she also knew that Dustless had the same ability as Itsuka Shido. Since she already had Dustless, what was the use of Itsuka Shido? Maybe if she could combine with someone as strong as Dustless, her strength would increase even more. No matter how she looked at it, it was more worth it than Itsuka Shido. Enlighten me? If I had known earlier, I would have killed Itsuka Shido. Recalling Itsuka Shido's arrogant words, Tokisaki Kurumi's lips curled into a mocking smile. Itsuka Shido said he would save her, he really didn't know how to write the word death. Looking at Dustless, Tokisaki Kurumi's mind became active. She suggested with a bewitching tone. There are many benefits if we combine. Why don't we combine with others? At least we can gain strength. Gain my ass. Dustless looked at Tokisaki Kurumi coldly. Ignoring her dazed expression, he circled around her. Are you crazy? Do you have any value in combining with me? After Tokisaki Kurumi's face turned green, Wuxia said lazily, in this world, there are as many people who want to sleep with me as there are sand in the Ganges. You're one of them. Who wants to sleep with you? Stop flattering yourself. We're just taking what we want. Tokisaki Kurumi was so infuriated by Dustless that she wanted to cry. But no tears came out. She looked at Dustless in a frenzy. The fusion she mentioned was not what Dustless understood. What I'm saying is, just as Tokisaki Kurumi was about to explain herself, Dustless rudely interrupted her. Isn't that what you mean? That's great. It means that you can still be saved. You know what it means to love yourself and know your own worth. You don't deserve me. I originally thought that rotten wood couldn't be carved. But it seems that I was wrong. TSK, I didn't expect that even rotten wood could shine one day. It's a miracle. Dustless sighed to himself. You bastard. Dare say that again. Tokisaki Kurumi looked at Dustless and gritted her teeth. Her lungs were about to explode from anger. How could there be such a shameless person in this world? When Tokisaki Kurumi realized that she had bumped into Dustless, she was so angry that she wanted to tear this guy apart. It was fine if he was narcissistic, but the most shameless thing was that he kept comparing Tokisaki Kurumi to himself. How shameless. Go to hell. In her anger, Tokisaki Kurumi activated her ability and aimed her black gun at Dustless. You want to start a fight because of a disagreement? Dustless casually glanced at Tokisaki Kurumi and said lazily, Miss Tokisaki, although I don't like to beat up women, there's a bottom line to everything. Tokisaki Kurumi felt as if she had been electrocuted. She subconsciously lowered her weapon as she recalled the times when Dustless suppressed her. She subconsciously lowered her weapon. Come find me when you've thought it through. Dustless didn't even look at Tokisaki Kurumi and left resolutely. Even though Itsuka Kotori's house was razed to the ground due to the fierce battle, a brand new house was built in no time. It was even bigger than the previous one. After returning home, Wuchen hurriedly washed his face and rinsed his mouth. Then, he went upstairs to sleep. You're such a lazy fella. You'll get indigestion if you sleep right after eating. Itsuka Kotori glanced at Wuchen with her watery eyes and muttered coldly. Perhaps she didn't realize that there was a gentleness in her eyes when she looked at Dustless. Previously, Tokichi Origami came to visit and thanked Dustless for saving her parents. This resolved the grudge between Itsuka Kotori and Tokichi Origami. As a result, Kotori's impression of Dustless had reached 100%. I've always been a lazy person. Training doesn't suit me. Wuchen just shrugged his shoulders, revealing a hopeless expression. Any kind of training was superfluous to him. Time flew by and it was already late at night. Ugh! At night, Wuchen turned over her body. She was lying in the warm bedding. She turned over and closed her eyes. She said in a vague voice. Really, why did the bed suddenly become smaller? Perhaps it was an illusion, but Dustless suddenly found the bed, which used to be spacious, to be a little cramped. Why is your reaction so slow? In the darkness, a blurry figure crawled on Dustless's bed. Seeing his sleepy handsome face, she grumbled unhappily. Isn't this guy's senses very sharp? How can he not notice me? Or is it because I don't exist? The young girl stared at Wu Chen's thin lips. Her face was flushed red and was very cute, like a ripe apple. You're lucky. After hesitating for a while, the girl finally lowered her head and gently kissed Wu Chen's lips with a red and cute face. It's warm and cold. Wu Chen murmured unconsciously when he was suddenly attacked. Naturally, he noticed it at the first moment. His closed eyes suddenly opened. Little girl, it's fine if you don't sleep in the middle of the night, but how dare you sneak attack me? P.S. 3,000 flowers plus updates, 3,000 tips plus updates, 1,000 comments plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates. Chapter 21:13. Even with the cover of the night, the girl's perfect appearance couldn't be concealed. Her fair skin gave off a wild beauty in the dark. Perhaps due to the sudden awakening of Dustless, the girl's eyes were empty and gloomy. She stared at Dustless with a blank expression. Her mind was in a mess, and she was stunned on the spot. Kotori! Dustless blurted out. It would have been better if he didn't say it, but as soon as he said it, Kotori's face turned red. Cough cough cough. Kotori coughed twice. She was only wearing simple white pajamas, and her fair legs were exposed to the air. Even though it was dark, Dustless could still see them clearly. She's young, but her body is quite good. If I remember correctly, Kotori is only 12 years old. Dustless muttered to himself. At the same time, he looked at the girl's embarrassed expression, and guessed what was going on. She wants to borrow my power to seal herself. Dustless knew Kotori's personality well. She was definitely the arrogant type. She didn't think he was charming enough to make her fall in love with him at all costs. Let's make the act real. Looking at the girl's clear eyes, they were as bright as the moon, pure and sincere. People say that the eyes are the window to the soul, and this window in front of him made him unable to reject it. Although Shido also had the ability to seal elves, Dustless guessed that the reason why he didn't choose that weak kid was because Shido was attacked by Tokisaki Kurumi and was traumatized. He had developed a serious phobia toward elves and knew that his sister was an elf. It was inevitable that there would be a rift in their sibling relationship. If I want to seal a fairy's power, I need her to be shy. Looking at the girl's blushing face, Dustless's indifferent eyes showed a rare trace of gentleness, but it quickly disappeared. He smiled confidently in his heart. It's just making a girl shy. It's too easy. Hee hee, you have a reason? I don't believe you. You're just trying to take advantage of me. I want to get my money back. A wicked smile appeared on Dustless's cold face. His eyes were as sharp as an eagle's as he scanned Kotori's body. He seemed to be thinking about where to start. You better not mess around. I didn't take advantage of you. Itsuka Kotori quickly moved away from Wu Chen's body. She felt uncomfortable being stared at by Wu Chen's invasive gaze. It was as if she was naked. Her entire body was exposed to his gaze. Although she had ambushed Dustless just now, the sad thing was that she didn't feel shy at all. She could still feel the power of the elves in her body. She could only maintain this state for 2 days. After 2 days, Itsuka Kotori might forget about the present and turn back into the violent fire spirit. You want to borrow my power to seal myself? Dustless looked at Itsuka Kotori with a wicked smile and said, "If that's the case, I can let bygones be bygones." Itsuka Kotori was overjoyed. Although she could see that Dustless's smile was very cunning, she still nodded. "I'm very sorry. Maybe it's a bit abrupt, but I really just want to seal my power." Dustless just smiled and asked lazily, "So, did you seal your power?" No. Itsuka Kotori's eyes were dim, and she looked very disappointed. "Since you kissed me without sealing your power, it means that you took advantage of me." Wu Chen looked at Itsuka Kotori shamelessly and said, "If that's the case, I'm going to get it back." Bansho Tensei. Dustless used his Rinnegan ability, and under the inertia of gravity, although Itsuka Kotori struggled, she was still taken into Dustless's arms. Puff. Being taken into Dustless's arms, Itsuka Kotori felt like she was electrocuted, and her strength was inexplicably sucked away. She looked up at Dustless's playful eyes, and her body trembled slightly. "It smells so good." The elegant fragrance suddenly rushed into her nose, and Itsuka Kotori's beautiful eyes were suddenly in a trance. It was hard to imagine that a man who looked like a sloppy man could have such a nice smell, and it was intoxicating. "You're really greedy. You took advantage of me again." Seeing the intoxicated Itsuka Kotori, Dustless showed his white teeth, and with a teasing look on his face, he suddenly raised his hand to slap her. I didn't." Dustless's words were like a basin of cold water, and Itsuka Kotori instantly woke up. Looking at the raised hand, a bad premonition flashed in her heart. "You're too young to learn good things. You must be punished." Dustless suddenly turned Itsuka Kotori's body around, and very skillfully pulled down her white skin a little bit, and her white skin was like a flawless jade. "Pa!" Dustless decisively slapped Itsuka Kotori, and instantly there was a dark red palm print. Ouch! Itsuka Kotori was like a frightened white rabbit. Her heartbeat accelerated, and she let out a frightened scream, but it sounded soft and powerless, and it was like a disguised request. Damn it! Itsuka Kotori's whole face was red, and she was sweating, and her small hands were clenched tightly. She didn't expect that she would be so weak. "Pa! How dare you attack me? Pa! How dare you take advantage of me again?" In the next few minutes, Dustless mercilessly slapped Itsuka Kotori a few more times. Itsuka Kotori's face was as red as hot iron, and her watery eyes were covered with a layer of mist. She turned her head to look at the red area where Dustless slapped, and wanted to find a hole to hide in. P.S. 3,000 flowers plus more chapters, 3,000 rewards plus more chapters, 1,000 reviews plus more chapters, 500 automatic subscriptions plus more chapters. Chapter 2114. It's about time. Looking at the girl's red cheeks, Wu Chen smiled faintly. He knew that the time had come. He stared at Itsuka Kotori, who was blushing. Wu Chen also stopped hitting her. Even though it was only a few minutes, Itsuka Kotori lowered her head, afraid to look at Dustless. She must be shy. If it was a normal person who dared to hit her like this, with Itsuka Kotori's personality, she would have turned into an angel and torn the person apart. But now Dustless was Itsuka Kotori's savior, and her favorability towards Dustless had reached 100%. "You stopped." Itsuka Kotori was surprised to find that Dustless had stopped hitting her. She didn't know why, but she didn't feel happy. Instead, she felt a sense of melancholy. Itsuka Kotori didn't know why, but she didn't say it out loud. Don't think that this is the end. Dustless, I won't let you go so easily." Itsuka Kotori looked at Dustless and gritted her teeth. She looked very angry. After all, being hit on the butt was something that any girl would find hard to accept. She might even hate the person who hit her but for the rest of her life. However, Wuxia turned a deaf ear to her. He leaned over and pressed Itsuka Kotori onto the bedding. What? What are you doing? Being pressed down by Dustless, Itsuka Kotori asked in fear. Huff 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 huff. Because the two were so close, Itsuka Kotori could even smell Dustless's breath. The warm breath blew on her cheeks, and the blush on her face turned even redder. The time is right. Dustless stared at Itsuka Kotori's face that was inches away from his. His whole body pressed down on her, and he could even feel her racing heartbeat. Finally, under Itsuka Kotori's shocked gaze, Dustless kissed her. Itsuka Kotori stared blankly at Dustless. Her mind went blank. She didn't expect Dustless to be so daring. Woo 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 woo. After being stunned for a moment, Itsuka Kotori suddenly struggled. However, her weak strength was nothing compared to Dustless. She was simply too weak. Dustless even stroked her on purpose. Soon Itsuka Kotori's breathing quickened, and her body temperature rose rapidly. She subconsciously obeyed Dustless. Boom boom boom. Itsuka Kotori's body suddenly shone with a bright white light. Immediately afterward, a large amount of energy surged out of her body and silently entered Dustless's body. The speed was extremely fast. In the blink of an eye, the power in Itachi Koto was completely drained. Soon after, the pajamas on her body also disappeared. Okay. Dustless immediately moved away from the girl's lips when he felt Kotori's power entering his body. Okay? After the two separated, Itsuka Kotori regained her consciousness. She gritted her teeth. After their lips parted, Dustless's lustful handsome face returned to its usual coldness. Could it be? You were faking it just now? Itsuka Kotori looked directly into Wu Chen's eyes and asked in a perturbed manner. Did you purposely make that expression of lust for me in order to seal away my fairy power? So what if I did, and so what if I didn't? Dustless asked calmly. His tone was completely different from before. He sensed the power in his body and said slowly. Just like you said, we both took what we needed. Itsuka Kotori's heart felt empty after hearing this. Although she was glad that her power was sealed, the words "we both took what we needed" still hurt her. Little girl. Dustless looked at the disappointed Itsuka Kotori and teased. Don't tell me you like me? What a sin. Itsuka Kotori put her hands on her hips and said arrogantly. Even if all the men in the world died, I wouldn't consider you. You sure are stubborn. Dustless rolled his eyes and said with a sigh. Also don't know who was the one who was delirious with emotion just now and almost fainted over. You're asking for it. Itsuka Kotori's face turned red and kicked at Qin Xiaobei. Plop. Who would have thought that Dustless would be able to dodge her leg easily with a god-tier skill? He then flipped over and pressed Kotori onto the bed again. Little girl. Dustless moved closer to Itsuka Kotori. They looked into each other's eyes. Then Dustless raised his right hand. Don't do anything stupid. Itsuka Kotori was very nervous. She thought that Dustless was going to spank her again. She cursed in her heart. This bastard, he's going to take advantage of me again. He's the one who likes me. But just when Itsuka Kotori thought that Dustless was going to spank her again, Dustless raised his right hand and pointed at the closed door. Go out, I won't send you off. Good night. Dustless then pushed Itsuka Kotori away and closed his eyes in satisfaction. He said, You've disturbed me for a while. Don't disturb my sleep. Itsuka Kotori's mouth twitched and almost vomited blood. She was naked, but this bastard was looking at her with disdain. She was pissed again. You want me to leave? I'm not leaving. I'm going to sleep here tonight. I'm going to snatch your bed and sleep with your woman. Remember this, bastard, this is my home. Dustless's words angered Itsuka Kotori. She was like an exploding barrel of gunpowder, glaring at Dustless. P.S. 3,000 fresh flowers plus updates, 3,000 rewards plus updates, 1,000 comments plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates. Chapter 21:15. Itsuka Kotori's eyes were burning with fire. Her already deep red eyes were now even redder, as if they were blood red. It was clear that she was furious with Dustless. Do you think I will leave just because you told me to? No way. Itsuka Kotori put her hands on her hips. Her beautiful eyes were filled with anger and dissatisfaction. This was her home, and Dustless, an outsider, had chased her away time and time again. How despicable. Tsk tisk. Dustless opened his eyes again and said with a smile, "You are quite ambitious. You want to sleep with me, and you want to sleep with me. If this isn't love, then what is? For a violent girl like you, having too much charm is not a good thing. You win. Just wait and see." Itsuka Kotori was speechless. She cursed him in her mind. In the end, he glared fiercely at Wu Chun. Then he turned around and left in indignation. He helplessly discovered that he was far from being Wu Chen's opponent in terms of strength or bickering. If he continued to stay, he would only bring disgrace upon himself. Bang! Itsuka Kotori kicked the door open and walked out of Dustless's room in a huff. She didn't go back to her own room. Instead, she went to take a shower. "Don't fall into my hands," Itsuka Kotori mumbled as she walked away. Dustless had given her quite a blow. That despicable guy doesn't know how to read people's minds. Itsuka Kotori lay in the warm pool and stared at the ceiling. She was silent for a while. Then a strange smile appeared on her face. Or does Dustless have a problem in that area? He didn't even look at my naked body. He even looked at me with disdain. Despicable guy. Am I that despicable? Here, Itsuka Kotori touched her face and looked at her reflection in the water. Her perfect facial features were flawless. It must be Dustless's problem, which is why he can look at me so calmly. After much consideration, Itsuka Kotori concluded that it was Dustless's problem. It must be a physical defect. If Dustless knew that Kotori dared to make up stories about him like this, he would definitely teach her a lesson. He had to admit that women were strange creatures. When you took the initiative to pay attention to them, you would think that they were up to no good. If you ignored them, they would think that you were looking down on them. Sometimes they were really unreasonable. On the other hand, Dustless had just sent Itsuka Kotori away, and was about to have a good night's sleep when an unexpected intruder came to visit him. Plop! Compared to Itsuka Kotori, this intruder was much braver. She jumped down from the sky and landed on Dustless's bed. Crack! Due to the strength of this sudden attack, Dustless's bed was crushed. Is there an end to this? Wu Chen raised his head, not knowing whether to laugh or cry. He stared at the perfect body in front of him and rubbed his temples. Did you go to the wrong place? 10 Fragrance. If you want to take a bath, you should go to the bathroom. The young girl that entered his eyes was Nightblade God 10 Fragrances. However, what gave him a headache was that the current her was only wearing a simple bathrobe. Her white skin was in full view. I just saw Kotori leave your room. What unspeakable secrets did you two do? Nightsword God 10 Fragrance glared at Dustless. His cheeks were puffed up and his gem-like eyes were filled with a strong desire to possess Dustless. Dustless recalled his previous experience and said lazily, "It's nothing. Kotori was just trying to take advantage of me by kissing me secretly." Plop. However, as soon as Dustless finished speaking, Toka pounced on him. Her body was like a snake, and she skillfully twisted with Dustless. Not only that, she also touched Dustless. Her restless hands touched all over Dustless's body. She even carefully touched some important places through his pajamas. Why are there so many female perverts these days? Dustless's mouth twitched. He felt helpless. Ever since he tamed Toka, this innocent girl had developed a strong sense of dependence on him. She clung to Dustless all day long. "Don't touch me. Get your hands off me." Perceiving that the most important place had been attacked, even with Dustless's calm disposition, his face collapsed. That place was not to be touched casually. "Kotori kissed you." Toka pouted and complained. "What's wrong with me touching you? This can improve our relationship. Don't tell me you hate me? Who told you all this nonsense?" When Wu Chen heard this, he was speechless to the extreme. It's okay to enhance feelings, but do you have to touch me indiscriminately? Wu Chen was also secretly conflicted about this. Yi Daoshan Toka was too naive, and the school was quite a lively place. There were many fujoshis around her. "Don't touch me." Seeing that the girl didn't know when to back off, Wu Chen's tone inevitably became more serious, and even carried a hint of reprimand. Nightblade God 10 Fragrance's body suddenly trembled slightly and stopped moving. She looked at Wu Chen pitifully. "Don't you hate me? You just misunderstood," Dustless replied calmly. "Hee if you don't, prove it now." Toka's eyes flashed with slyness. She giggled and pounced on Dustless again. This time she pressed down on Dustless. Her eyes flickered with a terrifying green light. She waved her arms, and even wanted to hold Dustless in her arms. P.S. 3,000 flowers plus updates, 3,000 rewards plus updates, 1,000 reviews plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.